Chapter 229. With a thought from Mo Sure, the particle gun shot out a stream of blue and white particles. Whoosh, it crossed a kilometer in an instant and shot toward the cheetah mech. The cheetah mech also sensed the attack coming. A yellow energy shield quickly appeared around the mech. However, when the blue and white particles hit the energy shield, there was no reaction. It instantly passed through the energy shield. It was as if the energy shield didn't exist at all. The next moment, the particle stream hit the mech. In just an instant, the cheetah mech seemed to have been electrocuted. Sparks and lightning kept coming out of its body. The yellow energy shield around the mech quickly disappeared. Seeing this, Mo Sure quickly retracted the particle gun on his right arm. The next moment, the genetic weapon on his right arm formed. He instantly flew 100 meters into the air. The giant axe came down with a bang. Boom! A crack that was 100 meters long and 5 meters wide instantly appeared on the ground. In the center of the crack, the cheetah mech had already been cut into hundreds and thousands of pieces. Sparks kept coming out. This was the characteristic of the mechs of the Flaming Land. The reason why the mechs were so strong was because of the energy shield. With the energy shield, it could block any attack. And once the energy shield was broken, basically any hunter could destroy it with an energy beam from an energy weapon. However, this energy shield alone was enough to stop all the hunters. This was because with the current technology of the Flaming Dawn continent, there was no other way to break this energy barrier apart from a desolate hunter using brute force. And now, Mo Sure's particle gun was technology that surpassed the technology of the Flaming Land, so it could easily break the energy shield. At this moment, Mo Sure scanned with his dragon mind and found a fingernail-sized chip in the pile of debris. According to the memory he obtained, even if the mech was destroyed, the mech owner could still locate the chip. Mo Sure landed and picked up the chip. He gently rubbed his right index finger and finger. The chip suddenly broke into pieces. The cheetah mech was finally dealt with. Next were the spider drones. Each spider drone had a chip in it. So, he had to destroy all the spider drones and then destroy the chips in them. But the world was so big, who knew where those spider drones were flying to now? Moreover, there were quite a number of spider drones. Even with Mo Sure's abilities, who knew how long it would take for him to destroy all of them? Moreover, these spider drones also had energy shields. Even if others encountered it, they would not be able to destroy it. Only Mo Sure could do it himself. He pondered for a moment and decided not to dwell on it any longer. The voice in his mind said, "System, check in for a special event." The system's voice quickly sounded frowny face sign in successful. Sign in event, destroy the cheetah mecha, sign in reward, 1000 overclocked particle spider drones. He checked the rewards in his mind. Overclocked particle spider drone. Upgraded version of the spider drone. It can emit a stream of overclocked particles to destroy the energy shields of other spider drones. It was true that whatever he lacked would come. He was just worrying about how to get rid of those spider drones when he received this reward. Then, the next step would be to find a few people who knew computers to operate these overclocked particle spider drones and the cheetah mecha. After returning to the base, Mo Sure called Wuxia Tao over. He said, "I have a great use for selecting computer geniuses in the base." Wuxia Tao was now the newly elected chief of the base. Mo Sure had saved the people of the base so many times, so he naturally would not disobey Mo Sure's words in the slightest. He immediately issued an order to search for computer geniuses in the base. Of course, there were only more than 100,000 people in the base. Moreover, most of these people were now engaged in manual labor. It was undoubtedly difficult to find one or two computer geniuses among them. Mo Sure also ordered the level 10 psychokinesis in all the bases in the world to search for computer geniuses in their respective bases. These level 10 psychokinesis now had a certain amount of weight in their respective bases. After all, they were the strongest group of people in the base. In just 3 days, more than a dozen bases had selected people who were talented in computer science. After Mo Sure read the information of these people, he frowned slightly. Many of these people were not young anymore. There was even a person in his 70s who was about to die. For the remaining young people, Mo Sure made dozens of copies of the books that the system had given him when he rewarded the mecha. He let them study by themselves. As geniuses, their ability to self-study should be very strong. As for Mo Sure himself, he took advantage of this time to continue controlling the sea dragon clone to devour at the bottom of the sea. Now he was devouring these super mutant beasts at the bottom of the sea to accumulate energy for the sea dragon clone. When he broke through, the sea dragon clone would be able to break through immediately. Secondly, he was looking for an opportunity to break through. He planned to wait for the sea dragon clone to finish devouring the remaining level 10 super mutant beasts in the trenches before heading to Bermuda. More than a month later, Emosher learned about the self-study of those geniuses. The results disappointed him. All the geniuses looked at these books as if they were reading heavenly books. Even some of the geniuses who claimed to be able to easily grasp the knowledge in any computer book they read. They were also at a loss in front of the books Emosher gave them. Some of the computer knowledge in the books was simply beyond their understanding. Some of the knowledge even completely subverted what they had learned. It was the complete opposite of what they had learned. How could they study by themselves? Emosher could only smile bitterly in his heart. Was it really impossible to find a computer genius among the millions of people left in the world? It was also at this time that in several bases around the world, people had been killed by the spider drones. Those spider drones were like hunters, constantly hunting down the people in these bases. People used almost all kinds of methods to deal with them. However, whether it was physical attacks or firearms attacks, they had no effect on these spider drones. Their bodies could produce a kind of earthy yellow energy shield. Even rockets could not penetrate this energy shield. Their bodies were only the size of a fist. It was difficult to find them if they were hidden. Therefore, for a time, these spider drones became a nightmare for those bases. 2 days later, in the evening, Emosher controlled the sea dragon clone to devour a level 10 super mutant beast in a trench. While he was resting, a great hunter cautiously approached the corpse farm. After finding Emosher, he said respectfully, "Mr. Emo, 2 monks are looking for you." Chapter 230. While Emosher was resting, someone came to report that 2 monks wanted to see him. In the apocalypse there weren't many monks. Emosher had only seen 2 monks since he came to this world. He was slightly puzzled. Why were these 2 monks looking for him? "Invite them in," Emosher said. More than 10 minutes later, the 2 monks, one old and one young, entered the corpse farm. The old monk was in his 60s or 70s, while the young monk was in his 20s. When the old monk saw Emosher, he put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. "Amit Ba. How have you been, Benefactor Emo?" The young monk also bowed. "Amit Ba." He added in his heart, "Good job." Emosher looked at the 2 monks, one old and one young. Both of their clothes were torn in many places. Other than their faces, there was almost no clean place on their bodies. It was obvious that they were travelers. Emosher asked in astonishment, "You 2 walked over from base C2? The young monk looked at his master with some resentment and said, "We sneaked out of base C2. Naturally, no one sent us a helicopter." Emosher looked at the 2 of them again. Both of them were ordinary people, but they actually left base C2. They walked more than 1,000 kilometers in the wilderness and came to base C1. Although Emosher's clone had basically cleaned up most of the infected creatures in Wuxia. But this old and young man, as ordinary people, actually walked more than 1,000 kilometers to base C2. This was really shocking. Especially considering that this old monk was already in his 60s or 70s, it was even more surprising. Emosher asked, "You 2 came to see me because the old monk had walked too much, his body looked very weak." The young monk spoke on his behalf. The young monk scratched his bald head and said, "Benefactor Emo, aren't you looking for a computer genius? My master thought that I played all kinds of game consoles very well, so he insisted on recommending me. But I've never touched any computer. The chief of the base passed me over. In the end, my master said that they didn't know what was good for them and insisted on sending me to you personally. I really have to hand it to him. My master is just a bag of old bones. How can he be so spirited? Besides, being good at gaming and being a computer genius aren't even close." The old monk coughed twice and glared at the little monk. Then he took the water from Happy and drank a mouthful. "That's the general idea." Then he cast a glance at Happy before he spoke to Emosher. "Big brother Emo, is this sister-in-law? So beautiful. If I can marry such a beautiful wife one day." The old monk looked at the little monk helplessly and said, "Don't worry." Profound reflection. The little monk stuck out his tongue and giggled. "Amit Ba, color is emptiness." As he spoke, he hurriedly took the cup of water and drained it in one gulp. Then he handed the cup to Happy. "Sister-in-law, please give me another cup," the old monk said apologetically. Benefactor Emo Jianxian lacks discipline. However, he can be considered a genius in any game. At this time he is at the mercy of others. "Mr. Emo, if you don't mind, please take him in." Emosher looked at the little monk, who was taking the second cup of water from Happy and gulping it down. He nodded. "All right, let him try." Anyway, they couldn't find a suitable person now. The old man and the young man had walked thousands of miles to give them a chance. Thinking of this, Emosher asked someone to copy a set of computer books he had obtained from the system. Take a look. I'll look for you in 3 days. Emosher said lightly. Seeing this, the old monk immediately put his palms together and said, Amitabha. The little monk added in a low voice, That's good. He said it in an extremely low voice, thinking that no one could hear it except for himself. However, Emosher took another look at the little monk. The little monk's heart couldn't help but thump. Did he hear it? For the next few days, Emosher didn't bother with the little monk. He controlled the sea dragon clone and swam towards Bermuda in the Atlantic Ocean. 3 days later he was not far from Bermuda. It was on this day that he went to the residence of the 2 monks during his rest time. When the old monk saw Emosher, he stood up to welcome him. He said to Emosher, Benefactor Emo is here. Emosher looked around the room and didn't see the little monk. He probed with his dragon senses and found that the little monk was reading in the bedroom. The old monk called the little monk out. When the little monk saw Emosher, his eyes lit up and he said, Brother Emo, can you find me a computer? I've been reading these books for the past 2 days without being able to practice. My hands have been itching for a long time. I wanted to look for you, but my master kept stopping me and insisted that I finish reading the 3 books. The old monk explained with a smile, You haven't even built a good foundation, yet you want to practice. You're like a tree without roots that can't last long. Seeing this, Emosher's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that this little monk was really a genius in this area? He asked the little monk, How many books have you read now? The little monk replied, I've read 2. I'm still reading the last one. Emosher asked, Can you understand them? The little monk shook his head. I can only understand 20%. But there's a lot of knowledge that needs to be learned through practice. If I had a computer. Emosher was secretly surprised when he heard this. There were so many computer experts from so many bases around the world, but none of them could understand it after so many days. This little monk had never touched a computer before, but he could understand 20% in just 3 days. If he wasn't a genius, then what was? But he still had to verify it. Guo Tao, who accompanied him, thought that the little monk was talking nonsense. But he could also see that these 2 monks seemed to have some relationship with Emosher. He immediately said, I'll get someone to find a computer. In the apocalypse, resources such as computers in the bases were prioritized for the laboratory. Ordinary people had never even seen a computer, let alone use one. Emosher waved his hand and said, No need. As he said this, he moved his mind. From his backpack he took out something that looked like a belt about 10 centimeters wide. He handed it to the little monk and said, Tie it to your waist. Everyone was a little confused. Weren't they talking about computers? Why did he suddenly take out a belt? Although the little monk didn't know why, he still tied it to his waist. Emosher pointed to a button on the belt. He said, Press it. The little monk immediately pressed it. The next moment, 2 light green lights were projected in front of the belt. Upon closer inspection, these weren't just 2 simple beams of light. In one light, something like a computer keyboard appeared. In the other light, a virtual screen appeared. Chapter 231. A virtual screen and a holographic touch keyboard. When these popped up from the belt, everyone's eyes widened. The older ones had only seen this kind of thing in movies and TV shows before the apocalypse. The younger ones, who were born after the apocalypse, had never seen this kind of thing. Even before the apocalypse, there had never been such advanced technology on Earth. Where on earth did Mr. Emo get it? Emosher didn't explain. He said to the little monk, Try it. The little monk was surprised. His right hand swiped across the virtual screen. Suddenly the virtual keyboard lit up. He was unlocking the keyboard. The next moment, his hands began to type on the keyboard. He typed very slowly. After all, it was his first time touching a computer keyboard. But the position of his fingers was not wrong at all. After a few minutes of simple testing, his typing speed became faster. As he typed, a picture of a Buddha appeared on the virtual screen. It was just a very simple, rough picture of a Buddha. Only the outline of the Buddha could be seen. On the left side of the Buddha there were 4 words, Amitabha. On the right side of the Buddha there were also 4 words, good. As the Buddha's mouth opened and closed, these 8 words kept appearing on the screen. Finally, countless words appeared. These words then converged to form another Buddha. Black lines appeared on the old monk's forehead. This disciple of his had never been normal. He didn't look like a monk at all. The others were surprised. This little monk had only learned how to program for 3 days? Nonsense, right? Emosher's eyes lit up. Learning how to program in 3 days did sound ridiculous. But it didn't rule out that some geniuses could always do some incredible things. Thinking of this, emosure moved his mind again. He took out the cheetah mech from his backpack. This cheetah mech was 5 meters long and 2 meters tall. Its whole body was cast with black metal. Its whole body was black. Just by standing there it would give off a breathtaking aura. When everyone saw the sudden appearance of the mech, they all felt a chill in their hearts. The timid ones directly took 2 steps back. Even Guojutao couldn't help but feel nervous. Emosure said, "There's no need to make the programming so complicated for now. As long as you can use the keyboard to control this mecha, it'll be fine. The mech manual is in the system. Look for it yourself." Everyone was a little surprised when they heard this. Mecha? This was not Earth's technology. How many more treasures did Mr. Emo have that he had yet to take out? When the little monk heard Emoshure's words, he immediately jumped in front of the cheetah mech. His eyes sparkled and his face was filled with excitement. He kept stroking the body. He cried out in surprise. "Ba, what a wonderful thing. Mecha? Holy sh*t brother Emo, where did you get it? It's actually a real mecha. F*ck big brother Emo, are you really letting me control it? Master, can I say that I'm the F*ck? Don't be angry, it's just an exclamation." The little monk liked to play video games since he was a child, to the point that he was obsessed with them. Naturally, he was also obsessed with the mecha in the game console. Now that he had seen a real mecha, how could he not feel excited? The old monk sighed helplessly. This old monk is not good at teaching. I've embarrassed myself in front of everyone." While the little monk was pleasantly surprised, he spent more than 2 minutes to find the mech manual in the system. Soon the mech was activated. The eyes of the cheetah mech suddenly lit up with a blood-red light. The eyes of the jet-black cheetah suddenly lit up with a blood-red light. It looked even more terrifying. Emosure reminded him. "Don't activate the weapon system first." The little monk naturally understood Emoshure's meaning. He immediately said, "I understand, big brother Emo." Then his fingers tapped on the keyboard a few times, and the cheetah mech slowly moved. The little monk was so excited that he kept crying out. "Holy sh*t, this is so wonderful. This feels so good. This is so much better than operating a mech in the game console. Master, I'm so happy." The old monk's shiny head was full of black lines. Even someone as calm as him could not help but scold. Divine reflection. The little monk acted as if he did not hear him at all. He continued to operate the mech while shouting. Everyone was shocked that Mr. Emo actually had such a mech, but they were also shocked by the little monk's genius. He had only self-taught for 3 days and he had already reached such a level. Wouldn't those who had studied for decades cry in the toilet? In fact, it was not their fault. Although the computer knowledge of the Flaming Land was similar to that of Earth in many ways. But there was a large part of it that was completely opposite to that of Earth. The more computer knowledge one had on Earth, the more difficult it was for them to accept the knowledge of the Flaming Land. This was because the knowledge of the Flaming Land had completely overturned their previous understanding. For people like the little monk who had never studied computer science on Earth, it was easier for them to start from scratch. Emosure said to Guojutao next to him, "Arrange for him to practice outside the city wall for the next few days." Guojutao nodded. "Yes, Mr. Emo." After Emosure finished explaining the matters here, the next step was to focus on improving his strength. Although Hunting Island No. 1 had been destroyed, this could only stop the people of the Flaming Land from coming for a period of time. There was only one way to really make them not dare to come to Earth again: strengthen himself. Therefore, Emosure had to make himself as strong as possible before they came. Emosure controlled the Sea Dragon avatar. After 5 hours of wandering, they had already arrived at the Bermuda area. The Bermuda Triangle was an equilateral triangle located in the Atlantic Ocean. Each side of this triangle was nearly 2,000 kilometers long. In this huge triangle area, there were often mysterious disappearances of planes and ships. It was said that the first person in human history to experience the danger of the Bermuda Triangle was the navigator Columbus. He once led a fleet of ships through the Bermuda Triangle and experienced monstrous waves that he had never seen before in his life. Their ships seemed to be sailing between canyons. All the compasses on the ship malfunctioned, and all the crew members were dizzy. Columbus hurriedly ordered them to return. But because the compasses failed, they couldn't tell the direction at all. Fortunately, their ship finally reached the shore safely. But at this time they were too far away from their scheduled landing site. Regarding this, Emosure had some understanding in his previous life. And the scientists had already given an explanation. The reason why planes and ships often crashed here was because there was an abnormal tape here. Therefore, when planes and ships passed by here, their electronic equipment would malfunction and eventually disappear. However, people still paled at the mention of the Devil's Triangle. Chapter 232. Emosher came to the Bermuda Sea. He spread out his dragon's will and took in the sea within a 100-kilometer radius. Within his detection range there didn't seem to be any difference. However, this was only the edge of the Bermuda Sea. He swam toward the center as he searched. According to Emosher's detection, there were obvious fish and shrimp zones in the Bermuda Sea. Some areas had fish and shrimp, while some areas didn't have any fish or shrimp. Emosher thought that this must have something to do with the magnetic tape. After swimming for about 600 kilometers, Emosher finally found something. He saw a flat-topped pyramid in the dark bottom of the sea. The pyramid was about 2,000 meters from the sea surface. The pyramid was about 100 meters tall and had a flat top. Each bottom of the pyramid was about 400 meters long. An underwater pyramid? Emosher was very surprised. He immediately swam toward the pyramid. He came near the pyramid. He used his dragon's will to search carefully several times. He saw that the underwater pyramid was also made of huge stones. Each of the huge stones was the size of a house. The entire pyramid looked magnificent and did not lose to the Egyptian pyramids at all. Moreover, this underwater pyramid was even more complete. Although there were traces of long-term seawater erosion on each stone, at least the entire structure was complete. Emosher swam around the pyramid a few times and didn't find anything strange. There was no entrance either. It seemed that this was just a simple pile of stones. However, when Emosher expanded his dragon's will to a 100-kilometer radius, he found that there were 3 other pyramids within this range. The shape, size, and material of each pyramid were almost exactly the same as the pyramid in front of him. Emosher expanded his search range again. In the end, he found that there were as many as 100 similar pyramids within 1,000 square kilometers. This was a huge group of pyramids. Every pyramid was equally majestic and huge. Even Emosher, who had seen a lot, couldn't help but be shocked. If this discovery was made public in the civilized era of his previous life, it would definitely shock the whole world. Emosher spent half a day carefully exploring this group of pyramids. He finally found that the pyramid in the center of this area was completely different from the other pyramids. The Iwu pyramid in the center was more than 800 meters tall. It was almost twice as tall as the other pyramids. The most special thing was that the material of the pyramid in the center was not ordinary stone. Instead, it was some kind of translucent stone that looked like glass. Emosher swam around the pyramid several times. He used his draconic will to investigate carefully. He found that the layout of the pyramid was indeed like an ancient tomb. The entrance to the tomb was in the center of the lowest level of the pyramid. From the outside, there was nothing out of the ordinary. However, when Emosher used his draconic will to investigate, he was able to detect that there was a mechanism on the boulder. The mechanism was very complicated. If an ordinary person tried to force their way in, they would probably be instantly turned into meat paste by the mechanism inside. However, the sea dragon clone was a terrifying existence that had reached the 10th level of a wild beast. With the current conditions on Earth, there was almost nothing that could break through its body's defenses. Therefore, Emosher didn't care about anything else. His 10-meter-long tail suddenly swept out. Bang! With a loud bang, the boulder was smashed into pieces. A 50-meter-long square passageway appeared on the pyramid. Emosher was inwardly overjoyed. Fortunately, the passageway was 50 meters long. If it was any smaller, the sea dragon clone wouldn't be able to enter at all. His draconic will probed along the passageway first. He already knew the various mechanisms inside like the back of his hand. However, after fully understanding these mechanisms, Emosher didn't care about them anymore. He controlled the sea dragon clone and swam forward. Ding, 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 ding. Iron arrows kept shooting out from the cracks in the walls on both sides. However, when these iron arrows hit the sea dragon clone, they kept making tinkling sounds. The scales on the surface of the sea dragon clone weren't afraid of these iron arrows at all. Emosher didn't care at all and continued to swim forward. After swimming 50 meters, the stone walls on both sides began to move and squeeze toward the middle. Emosher sneered in his heart. The giant tail swung violently. Bang, bang. With 2 consecutive sounds, the stone walls on both sides were smashed into pieces. Even the entire pyramid seemed to shake twice. In fact, with the current strength of the sea dragon clone, as long as Emosher was willing, he could smash the entire pyramid into pieces at any time. However, in order not to destroy the overall structure of the pyramid, he swam in through the passageway. Next, embark destroyed 5 more mechanisms in a row. Only then did he reach the center of the pyramid. Here there was another passageway that diagonally led downwards. The passageway looked pitch black. However, embark could detect that at the end of the pitch-black passageway was a vast world. Without any melancholy, he continued along the passageway. During this time he broke through 3 more mechanisms in a row. Only then did he reach the end of the pitch-black passageway. When he arrived here he suddenly felt enlightened. He saw that this was a huge valley. Corals grew everywhere in the valley. And almost all the corals were faintly fluorescent. They were red, green, yellow, and purple. They looked like neon lights at night in the city. However, they were far from being as tacky as neon lights. The light on these coral bushes was softer. Embark was secretly surprised. Could this be the legendary undersea garden? In his previous life, he had once read a report about the undersea garden on the internet. It was said that a large coral bush was found at the bottom of the sea, and it looked like an undersea garden. However, the undersea garden that embark saw in front of him was even more gorgeous than in the report. He controlled the 20-meter-long sea dragon clone and used his dragon will to investigate the surroundings as he slowly swam forward. Soon he discovered that this coral forest was more than 70 kilometers long. In this 70-kilometer-long coral forest, there were dozens of creatures. These creatures all had human heads and fish bodies. Their gills had evolved into fish gills. However, their bodies were not all like mermaids. Some had bodies like octopuses. Some were like seahorses. Some had bodies like huge whales. In short, all kinds of undersea animals had human heads. After embark's blood dragon's eye, these animals had all reached level 10 super mutated. However, their species column did not show that they were beasts. Instead, it was a general term. Mermaid? Embark shook his head inwardly. Alright, these mermaids had completely overturned his beautiful imagination of the word mermaid. At this moment, a few nearby mermaids with squid bodies had already discovered embark. Chapter 233. After discovering embark's sea dragon clone, the cuttlefish merman immediately swam towards it. Each cuttlefish merman was more than 300 meters long. But on this 300-meter-long body, there was a normal human head. It looked extremely out of place. As they swam towards embark, they kept making gurgling sounds from their throats. With the help of the foreign language proficiency skill, embark could easily master any language on Earth. At this moment he heard the meaning of these giant cuttlefish mermen. There's an intruder. Kill it. It looks like a strange fish without any intelligence. At this point a cuttlefish merman opened his mouth. Puff, a ball of jet black liquid spurted out. It went straight towards embark's sea dragon clone. When this mass of black liquid passed by the seaweed next to it, the seaweed continued to emit black bubbles and began to rot rapidly. It turned out that the liquid spurted out by the cuttlefish merman was extremely corrosive. However, this extremely corrosive was only relative to the creatures on Earth. For the sea dragon clone it was not worth mentioning at all. How dare you show off your meager skills in front of an expert? Embark almost said great mighty heavenly dragon in his heart. Then a mouthful of strong acid was spat out. Puff, a mass of dark green liquid spurted out. In just an instant, the fan-shaped area with a radius of 1 kilometer in front of him was shrouded in the strong acid breath. At this moment, not only was the seaweed in this area rapidly rotting. Even the rocks in the surroundings were bubbling and melting rapidly. At the same time, the seawater within this area was constantly boiling. As for the cuttlefish mermen, the skin on the surface of their bodies was quickly corroded, revealing the flesh and blood inside. Then the flesh and blood were also corroded, revealing the bones inside. The mouths of their human heads kept letting out mournful screams. Hiss, hiss. But this scream only lasted for a few seconds before their heads were corroded until only residue was left. The commotion here quickly attracted the other mermen. The 2 hammerhead shark mermen hurriedly sent a signal to the other mermen. There's an intruder. There's an intruder. All merfolk support them immediately. In less than a moment, more than 50 mermaids emerged from the corals of the entire valley. Some of them were only about 10 meters tall. Some of them were 400 to 500 meters tall. There was even an electric eel mermaid that was 1,000 meters long. On the 1,000-meter-long body, there was only a small human head. It looked extremely strange. On its head there was a pair of cherry-like antennae. The 2 antennae flashed with blue light. Embark aimed at the 1,000-meter-long electric eel man. He swung his tail vigorously and swam towards the electric eel man at full speed. The electric eel made a few squeaking sounds from its mouth. Emo sure understood what he meant. You don't know the meaning of death. Soon, when the two of them were only 100 meters apart, the pair of antennae on the electric eel's forehead shone brightly with blue light. A bolt of lightning shot straight at the sea dragon clone. This lightning bolt had a diameter of more than 2 meters. Even a level 10 super mutant beast would be seriously injured if it was electrocuted, if not killed. However, the sea dragon clone was indeed level 10, but it was not a super mutant beast. It was a whole realm higher than a super mutant beast. It was a desolate beast. Buzz buzz, the electric current hit the sea dragon clone in an instant. Emo sure only felt a burst of numbness all over his body, as if he had just taken out a sauna. He felt comfortable all over. Comfortable, Emo sure said. When the electric eel man saw this, a look of horror flashed in his eyes. One had to know that electric eel men were basically unstoppable in this sea area. Even the powerful killer whales and mermaids had to retreat in front of the electric eel mermaids. After all, as long as they shot out an electric current, even a killer whale would be paralyzed and unable to move. But now, his electric current did not have the slightest effect on this little strange fish. Thinking of this, the electric eel man's 1,000-meter-long body swam over. He directly surrounded the sea dragon clone. Then, from beginning to end, electric current flashed. And in the middle of the encirclement, a huge electric net was formed. In this electric net, electric currents more than 2 meters in diameter flowed rapidly like giant pythons. Buzz buzz buzz, buzz buzz buzz, these electric currents kept hitting the sea dragon clone. Emo sure was once again electrocuted until his whole body was numb. Comfortable, Emo sure said in his heart. This was the most comfortable feeling he had ever felt in his life. It was as if he had a full body massage. The electric eel man saw that this small strange fish not only did not feel the slightest pain under his electric current, but also twisted his body comfortably. This made him even more horrified. What kind of monster was this? In horror he turned around and wanted to escape. Emo sure originally wanted to let him electrocute him a few more times, but he didn't expect him to want to escape. He shook his head helplessly. His body quickly grew in size amidst the crackling sounds. In the next moment his body reached nearly 200 meters long. He opened his huge mouth and directly bit the electric eel man's tail. Crack, the tail was bitten off. The electric eel man opened his mouth and screamed in pain, constantly twisting his body. The area within a kilometer was suddenly stirred up into a turbid mess. But with Emo sure's strength, he easily suppressed this electric eel man. He pressed him under his body and then continued to devour him bite by bite. More than half an hour later, the electric eel man was devoured by him. At this time, the other hundreds of mermaids around had already surrounded him. Emo sure moved his mind, and more than 50 tentacles instantly grew on the sea dragon clone's body. The suction cups on each tentacle had an extremely strong suction force. Those mermaids at the bottom of the sea were sucked into the suction cups one after another. Then, from the suction cups, a sanguisurincus stretched out and directly pierced into the suction cups. It absorbed the blood of these mermaids. These mermaids kept struggling. But no matter how they struggled, they could never escape the control of the suction cups. In just a few minutes, these hundreds of mermaids were all devoured by the sea dragon clone. In this way, Emo sure slaughtered more than 500 mermaids in just 1 hour. Nearly half of the mermaids in the entire valley were slaughtered. The remaining 500 or so mermaids, seeing how ferocious the strange fish was, hurriedly fled forward in horror. But how could their speed compare to the speed of the sea dragon clone? Emo sure controlled the sea dragon clone and chased forward while devouring these mermaids. A moment later he chased to the end of the valley. There were traces of buildings there. The first thing that caught his eye were the 2 tall stone statues on both sides. Chapter 234. Each of the 2 huge stone statues was more than 500 meters tall. They were like 2 door gods. There were many small holes on the stone statues, which were obviously eroded by seawater over countless years. What surprised Emo sure was that these 2 stone statues were not mermaids. They were humans. After passing through the gate between these 2 door gods, there was a seemingly very wide area. There were large areas of buildings here. Houses, bridges, stone gates, stone roads. There was also a stone pyramid that was 1,000 meters tall. Under the reflection of the surrounding coral bushes, this huge city looked full of vicissitudes after the baptism of time. Emo sure's heart moved slightly. Legend had it that in history, there was a civilization called the Atlantis civilization. Later it suddenly disappeared overnight. Some people said that the entire Atlantis sank into the sea. Could it be that this was it? Those mermaids fled into the city and quickly hid in these buildings. Of course, the mermaids were very large in size. Even if they wanted to hide, they could only hide in those tall buildings. There were also some mermaids who fled to the pyramid in the center of the city. They crawled on the ground in front of the pyramid. They kept praying loudly. "Great King of Atlantis, please save your people. Great King of Atlantis, there are outsiders who are slaughtering your people. Please save your people." At this time, the huge pyramid, with a rumbling sound, cracked to both sides. From it, a mermaid swam out. This mermaid was completely different from the other mermaids who were ugly, strange, and ferocious. This was a female mermaid. The upper body was completely a woman's body. The lower body was a fishtail. This was completely consistent with the legendary image of a mermaid. This woman, whether it was her figure or appearance, was absolutely one in a million. Her pair of eyes, as blue as the sea, seemed to be able to hook people's souls. She looked at the group of mermaids below and said, "My people, as your king, I, the Queen of Atlantis, will not let any creature hurt you." All the hundreds of mermen below lowered their heads even more. "Thank you, Queen." The Queen of Atlantis shifted her gaze away from her people. He turned to Emosher's sea dragon clone. When her gaze fell on the sea dragon clone, a cold, murderous intent flashed in her azure eyes. He let out a roar. "You dare to harm my Atlantean people?" As she spoke, cracking sounds could be heard from her body. Her body also began to expand rapidly. It grew longer and thicker. In the end, her body reached a length of 1,500 meters. Moreover, after she grew bigger, her head didn't stay the same like other fish. Instead, his head grew longer as well. Emosher was slightly surprised. During battle, their bodies would enlarge in size in order to increase their combat power to the limit. Normally, his body would shrink several times or even 100 times in order to reduce his energy consumption. This was a skill that could only be mastered by desolate beasts. He immediately used the blood dragon's eyes to look at the Queen of Atlantis. Species, submermaid, level 10 ultra-mutated wild beast, abilities, extreme charm, thousands of sharp teeth. It turned out that this wasn't a real mermaid. It was a subspecies of mermaid that only had a portion of human bloodline. At the same time, Emosher knew that she was only a level 10 ultra-mutated beast. Although she had mastered a certain level of desolate beast abilities, due to the restrictions on Earth, she would never be able to reach the level of a desolate beast. Emosher had experienced the extreme charm skill once before. With the blood dragon's eyes, these were basically floating clouds in his eyes. As for what thousands of sharp teeth were, Emosher didn't know. However, no matter how powerful a level 10 ultra-mutated beast skill was, it was nothing in front of a level 10 desolate beast. The mermaid's huge head opened its huge mouth. And the huge mouth opened wider and wider. In the end, not only did it crack to the back of her head, but it also cracked to her neck. Continuing down, her entire upper body cracked open. The crack was filled with 2 rows of uneven yellowed teeth. There was still some raw meat hanging between the teeth. She looked ferocious and disgusting. Compared to her previous appearance, it was a complete contrast. This huge mouth directly swallowed Emosher's sea dragon clone. Emosher sneered in his heart. He controlled the sea dragon clone, stretched its body, and floated there. He allowed the mermaid to devour it. The mermaid's huge mouth directly bit the sea dragon clone's neck. The 2 rows of sharp intersecting teeth were each more than 2 meters long and looked like 2 rows of sharp swords. Crack. Under this bite, the sea dragon clone didn't move at all. The mermaid was slightly shocked. What was going on? With her sharp teeth, even a rock could be easily crushed. She couldn't bite this strange fish's body? Emosher was controlling the sea dragon clone at this moment. Its 2 front claws, which were as thick as tree trunks, grabbed both sides of the mermaid's big mouth. Then he tore it forcefully. Hiss. It actually tore open another 500 meters of the mermaid's big mouth. It tore her upper jaw, along with her entire head, off her body. Blood immediately gushed out. It spread out in the sea water. The mermaid didn't even have the chance to struggle before she was torn in half by Emosher. Instant kill. And he didn't use any skills. He killed the Queen of Atlantis in one fell swoop with brute force. All the mermaids present were horrified when they saw this. Their great Queen of Atlantis died just like that. And she was killed by this strange fish in one blow. How was this possible? The Queen of Atlantis had lived for hundreds of years and was the most powerful existence in the entire sea. How could she be killed in one blow? But now the reality was in front of them and they had to believe it. At this moment they looked at Emoshur with fear and despair in their eyes. In their eyes, the Queen of Atlantis was a godlike existence. And now, even their god had been killed by this strange fish in one blow. What else could they do? Run? Resist? What a joke. Seeing that these mermaids had all lost the will to resist, Emoshur immediately unleashed thousands of tentacles and swallowed them all. At this point, Emoshur had already devoured more than 1,000 mermaids. At the same time in his mind he said, "System, sign in." The system's voice quickly sounded, and it was still so pleasant to the ear. Sign in successful. Sign in location, Atlantis. Sign in reward, Dragon Palace upgrade. After Emoshur checked this reward, he was overjoyed. After the upgrade of the Dragon Palace, the benefits it brought were far beyond Emoshur's imagination. Chapter 235. After Emoshur checked in at Atlantis, his reward was the upgrade of the Dragon Palace. He checked the reward in his mind. Virtual Dragon Palace upgraded to Level 2. Level 2 Virtual Dragon Palace generates virtual arrow towers and virtual city walls. The virtual city wall could resist any attack below LV-10, including LV-10 hunters. The virtual arrow tower could cause damage to any creature below LV-10, including LV-10 hunters. The automatic attack range is 10 kilometers. Attack and defense are passive skills, automatically triggered when encountering the enemy's attack and defense. At the same time, Emoshur saw a scene in his mind. Around the virtual Dragon Palace of Base C1, it was like building a house in the game. Virtual bricks were quickly piled up. Virtual stones were quickly piled up as well. Just a few minutes later, a virtual city wall was built around the entire virtual Dragon Palace. This virtual city wall was 10 times taller than the physical city wall around the base. It reached a height of 100 meters. Arrow towers were quickly built on top of these virtual city walls. These arrow towers were more than 200 meters tall. The entire virtual city wall was like a ring-shaped mountain range. The arrow towers above were like mountain peaks. There were no less than 100 virtual arrow towers like this. They covered the entire base. Emoshur looked at these and was overjoyed. After the upgrade of the virtual Dragon Palace, any creature below level 10 hunters could not cause damage to the virtual Dragon Palace. And if they dared to attack the virtual Dragon Palace rashly, the virtual Dragon Palace's counterattack would be absolutely awesome. As long as the enemy did not send any hunters, the rest of the hunters would die. This effect was too heaven-defying. Of course, others could not see such a heaven-defying virtual Dragon Palace. In their eyes there were no tall city walls or arrow towers at all. Now that he had this level 2 virtual Dragon Palace, Emoshur could not help but have an idea in his mind. Previously he thought that when he was strong enough he would go to the Flaming Land to explore. They dared to treat Earth as a hunting ground, so he would let them know who the prey was. But it would take a long time to realize this idea. But now that he had this virtual Dragon Palace, he could go to the Flaming Land directly. He could use Hunting Island 1 as his base. He could use this to develop and strengthen his forces. And now on the entire Earth, there were fewer and fewer places where one could sign in. The Flame-beginning continent was undoubtedly a brand new check-in map. Thinking of this, Emoshur couldn't help but feel a little excited. However, with his cautious nature, it was naturally impossible for him to go now. At the very least, he had to find the dragon ruins at the bottom of the sea to see if he could raise his strength to the level of a hunter. Thinking of this, he shrunk his body and observed the surrounding terrain. After investigating, he found that the surrounding terrain was almost exactly the same as the terrain on the map he had obtained before. Except for the underwater city, the other mountains and ravines were almost copied from the map. The location of the dragon ruins was marked on the pyramid that the mermaid had just come out from. Emoshur was overjoyed and immediately came to the top of the pyramid. Looking down from here he saw a pitch-black cave entrance. The cave entrance was huge. The diameter was almost exactly the same as the bottom side of the pyramid. The existence of the pyramid seemed to be to block the entrance of the cave. Emoshur used his draconic psyche to investigate the cave. The cave was still empty and there was nothing inside. After carefully probing the inside a few more times with his draconic psyche and confirming that there was no danger inside, Emoshur controlled the sea dragon avatar and swam into the cracked pyramid. Then he entered the cave from the bottom of the pyramid. This was an oval-shaped cave. The longest part of the cave was more than 5,000 meters long. The widest part was more than 2,000 meters. On the other side of the cave, there seemed to have been a huge exit in the past. But because of the changes in the Earth's crust, the cave entrance had completely collapsed. Emosher looked around for a moment and sighed in his heart. I finally found it, he said in his mind. System, sign in. The system's voice immediately sounded frowny face. Sign in successful. Sign in location, dragon ruins at the bottom of the sea. Sign in reward, 1. Underwater roaming, 2. Water dragon's breath, 3. A wisp of draconic psyche, 4. A drop of titan dragon blood. This should have been the lair of a water dragon in the past. This time he directly received 4 rewards. Emosher glanced at it and roughly knew what the 4th reward was for. However, he still suppressed the excitement in his heart and finished reading the first 2 skills. Underwater roaming was obviously a skill that could allow him to survive in the water. With this skill, Emosher's main body could also survive in the water for a long time. Water dragon's breath could spit out energy water pillars. In terms of destructive power, it was far inferior to flame dragon's breath. But under certain circumstances, it was still very useful. The 3rd draconic psyche was needless to say. He had obtained a wisp of draconic psyche before, and now with this wisp of draconic psyche, his draconic psyche had reached the peak of level 3. As long as he obtained a little more draconic psyche, he would be able to reach level 4. This already made Emosher happy. After reading these 3 rewards, Emosher shifted his gaze to the 3rd reward. His heart was beating faster than usual. Titan dragon blood. After swallowing, it can help the host break through the limit and reach the hunter realm and obtain the corresponding skills. F***ck, it finally appeared. Emosher couldn't help but feel his heart beat faster. He had always been cautious and liked to plan before acting. At this time he couldn't help but directly put the sea dragon clone into his personal reservoir. The next moment his consciousness returned to his main body. At this time it was late at night in the base. There was no one around. Everything was silent. Emosher's draconic psyche probed again. After confirming that it was completely safe, with a thought in his mind he took out the drop of titan dragon blood. This drop of blood was contained in a bottle only the size of a finger. He opened the bottle cap. He saw that this drop of blood was a clear bright red. It rolled in the bottom of the bottle. It was like a drop of water rolling on a lotus leaf. Just by looking at this drop of blood, one could feel that it contained an extremely majestic energy. This majestic energy was much greater than the energy in the blood dragon wings on Emosher's back. In the past it was the Titan Dragon bloodline modification liquid. But now this drop was directly the Titan Dragon blood. One could imagine that the two were not on the same level at all. Emosher suppressed the excitement in his heart and poured this drop of blood-red liquid into his mouth. This drop of liquid melted as soon as it entered his mouth. It turned into an extremely large amount of energy and rushed to all of his meridians at an extremely fast speed. It followed all of his meridians and rushed to every cell in his body. Chapter 236. The energy contained in a small drop of liquid was unimaginably huge. At first, it flowed along his meridians. But soon, the small meridians could not contain the huge amount of energy. Thus, the huge amount of energy began to break through the barriers between the cells in his body. The huge amount of energy rampaged through Emosher's body like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins. It seemed to want to tear apart, break through, and destroy the cells in Emosher's body. The pain of his body being torn apart continued to come. Only now did Emosher realize how important the modification liquid was to his body. If not for the modification liquid, he would have exploded into a bloody mist when this huge amount of energy entered his body. At this time, although Emosher's body was in intense pain, he could still barely withstand the terrifying energy. But soon his body had reached its limit. The violent energy seemed to be about to tear his body apart. At this moment, the dragon claws on his arms condensed. The Titan dragon breastplate on his body had also condensed. In this way, the pain in his arms and torso was alleviated a little. It was also at this moment that his legs began to slowly become thicker and longer. In the end, they actually became 3 times longer and 3 times thicker than before. Furthermore, tough and shiny black scales had also grown out of his legs. His feet were also 3 times larger than before. And accompanied by the sound of bones cracking, there was a continuous sound. His feet gradually turned into a pair of dragon claws. At this time, except for his head, his arms, legs, and torso had all turned into dragon form. Of course, overall, the dragon form at this time was not the true dragon form. It was equivalent to a dragon's body in human form. In this form, Emosher's physical strength was extremely terrifying. Whether it was his attack or defense, they were all greatly enhanced. Gradually, the pain in Emosher's body slowly subsided. And in his mind, the image of the giant dragon appeared again. It was still the shadow of the giant dragon. But this time, the shadow was more solid than the previous few times. When the giant dragon looked at Emosher, Emosher only felt a sense of horror in his heart, as if he was looking at an abyss demon. The dragon was several meters long. It streaked across the sky, blotting out the sun. And the world below the giant dragon was a continuous stretch of mountains. However, there was no longer any vegetation on the mountain. Scorched earth was everywhere. From time to time they could see smoke and fire filling the air. In this smoke-filled mountain, there were corpses of other dragons everywhere. There were blue, purple, red, and black dragons of all colors. They could be as large as a few thousand meters or as small as a few dozen meters. It was clear that a war between dragons had just taken place here. Emosher still wanted to take a closer look, but the giant dragon in the sky had already retracted its wings and swooped down. Again? Emosher was speechless. Although he had already experienced such a situation several times. But every time he experienced it, it felt like his first time. After all, when it first appeared, it was just a blurry shadow. And now, it was becoming more and more realistic. Therefore, even someone as strong as Emosher could not help but tremble slightly. He wanted to escape, but he found that his legs were already frozen in place. In the end, he could only watch as the huge dragon opened its cave-like mouth and completely swallowed him. Only then did Emosher suddenly open his eyes. At this time he was about 3 meters tall. He was like a giant. Fortunately, the roof of the corpse farm was about 3.5 meters high. Otherwise, his head would have hit the roof at this time. His whole body, except for his head, was covered with a layer of black scales. It looked very visually striking. Of course, this was not his real body. It was just his skill. He took a look at his attributes in his mind. Name, Emosher. Level 1 Scavenger, Level 3 Long Yensher. Evolution Path, Titan Dragon, Few. Emosher let out a long breath. His eyes shone brightly. Because of excitement, his cheeks were a little red. Finally, he had become a scavenger. When he was a level 10 Great Hunter, he could already kill a level 5 scavenger. Now that he had become a level 1 scavenger with his strength, killing a level 6 scavenger should not be a problem. At this time he moved his mind and withdrew his skill. His whole body returned to the body of a human. Looking at his naked lower body, Emosher shook his head helplessly. If only he could borrow a pair of pants from Green Fatty. Now that he had evolved into a scavenger, according to the previous plan, Emosher should go to the Flaming Land. But when he signed in before, he obtained a strand of Dragon Will, which made Emosher's Dragon Will almost reach the peak of level 3. This made him temporarily put the plan to go to the Flaming Land on hold. Because before, the Plague Dragon had divided his Dragon Will into tens of thousands and attached to many people. Now he just had to find a way to find those people and devour the Plague Dragon's Dragon Will in their bodies. Then his Dragon Will would definitely be promoted to level 4. With level 4 Dragon Will, his combat strength would increase by a lot. At that time, it would be safer to go to the Flaming Land. With Emosher's current Dragon Will, as long as he was within 1,000 meters of people with Dragon Will, he would be able to sense the Dragon Will in their bodies. Early the next morning, Emosher was in the entire base, sensing the Dragon Will in these people's bodies. With his speed, he quickly circled around the base. In the end, he found more than 10 people with Dragon Will in their minds. Of course, compared to Emosher's Dragon Will, the Dragon Will in these people's bodies was very weak. Emosher came in front of a middle-aged woman. His Dragon Will could easily sense the Plague Dragon's Dragon Will in that person's body. The middle-aged woman looked at Emosher with a slight fear in her eyes. This was the reaction everyone had when facing Emosher. Emosher did not say much. He directly wrapped the woman with Dragon Will to prevent the Plague Dragon's Dragon Will from escaping. Then a part of Dragon Will entered the woman's body and directly invaded her brain. At this moment, the Plague Dragon's Dragon Will that had been deeply hidden in the woman's body finally knew what Emosher was going to do. He sneered. "Lowly human, you want to devour my Dragon Will? How dare you show off your insignificant skill in front of an expert?" As he spoke, his Dragon Will suddenly expanded and tried to devour Emosher's Dragon Will. Unfortunately, his Dragon Will had already gone through 10,000 years, so there was not much left. Later on, it split into tens of thousands of strands, so there was not much left. Moreover, Emosher's Dragon Will devour skill ignored the opponent's level. Therefore, Emosher easily devoured the Plague Dragon's Dragon Will. Chapter 237. After Emoshur devoured this person, he could feel that the dragon will in his body seemed to have increased a little. Although it wasn't much, with the strength of his dragon will, he would be able to detect the slightest change. The middle-aged woman didn't know what Emoshur had done. Emoshur only said indifferently, "You can go now." The middle-aged woman immediately heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly said, "Yes, Mr. Emo." She turned around and quickly left. Emoshur looked at the second old man. The plague dragon's dragon will in the old man's body also detected that Emoshur had devoured the plague dragon's dragon will in the woman's body. He couldn't help but be shocked. He quietly shrank into the old man's body and didn't dare to move at all. He tried to use this method to avoid Emoshur's devouring. But it was obvious that he was too naive. Emoshur's dragon will easily entered the old man's body and invaded his brain. Only now did the plague dragon's dragon will in the old man's body realize that there was no way to avoid it. It immediately launched a frenzied counterattack against Emoshur's dragon will. However, in front of Emoshur's dragon will, his dragon will was like starlight compared to the moon. In the end, in less than 5 seconds, Emoshur devoured this dragon will. At this moment, the plague dragon's dragon will in the other people's bodies saw this and hurriedly swarmed forward, wanting to completely devour Emoshur. But it was obvious that they were wrong. Even if they attacked together, it would be of no help. Dragon will devour regardless of level. It was no joke. When their dragon will invaded Emoshur's body, they realized how stupid they were. It turned out that Emoshur's dragon will had already set up an inescapable net in his body, waiting for them to come in. In the end, their dragon wills were all devoured by Emoshur. In the next 3 days, Emoshur went to all the bases in the world. In these bases he found more than 300 people with dragon wills. Although the plague dragon's dragon will had split into thousands of strands and hidden in the human body. But after so many years, there were always people who died unexpectedly. There were also people who died because they couldn't withstand the plague dragon's dragon will. In the end, there were only 300 people left. Fortunately, when Emoshur devoured the dragon intent of the 237th person, he felt the dragon intent in his mind grow at an extremely fast speed. This time, the breakthrough of dragon thoughts was not like the tearing pain that his body had to endure when he broke through to become a hunter. On the contrary, it was because he had been using dragon will for many years that he was extremely familiar with it. The entire breakthrough process seemed to have come naturally. Within a short 5 minutes, Long Yen had already broken through. At that instant, he could feel his dragon will spreading across the place. It actually covered an area with a radius of 200 kilometers. Breaking through one level would increase the distance by 50 kilometers. He was much stronger than the average Psyche master. One had to know that for an ordinary telekinesis master, every time they broke through a level, their telekinesis range would only increase by 10 kilometers. At the same time, Emoshur learned a new skill through this breakthrough. The power of this skill could only be greater than the dragon will meteor. Moreover, the range of this skill far exceeded that of the dragon will meteor. Next, Emoshur devoured the draconic will in the remaining 100 or so people. 3 days later he returned to the base. Now almost everything in the world had been settled. He did not intend to kill the remaining infected creatures. He would leave these infected creatures as sparring partners for the humans on Earth. That night in the base he opened his mouth and signed in. System, specify dragon blood, double the sign in. The system's voice sounded. Specify dragon blood, it can only be doubled each time. After the dragon palace was upgraded, the sign in reward can be quadrupled each time. Stacking the 2 rewards can get 8 times the reward. Pef! Emoshur almost spat out a mouthful of blood in his heart. He couldn't help but shout in his heart, wasn't it 10,000 times before? The system's voice replied. The energy contained in dragon blood is too huge. With the host's physical strength, swallowing 10,000 drops at a time is simply unbearable. Moreover, dragon blood is a treasure. Every drop of sign in requires 10 million evolution points. With the host's current evolution points of more than 70 billion, he can only sign in 7,000 drops. *CK. Emoshur couldn't help but curse. This was too much of a scam. 1 drop of sign in requires 10 million. It was really too much. However, in order to become stronger, not to mention 10 million, even if it was 100 billion, he had to grit his teeth and bear it. The system continued. This sign in requires 20 million evolution points. Do you want to sign in? Yes. Emoshur almost cried. Sign in successful. Sign in reward, 2 drops of Titan dragon blood. Soon, Emoshur's consciousness focused on the system backpack. The next moment he saw 8 bottles of Titan Dragon blood in the system backpack. This made Emosher's heart ache a lot less. Fortunately, the Dragon Palace was upgraded to level 2. The Dragon Palace's bonus for sign-in didn't consume evolution points. That was why he was able to get 6 drops of dragon blood in a single sign-in. Thinking of this, his heart felt a lot better. He opened the bottle cap and swallowed the 8 drops of Titan Dragon blood. He felt that the energy in his body had increased a lot. With this energy, the power of the energy weapon unleashed during battle would definitely be extremely shocking. In the Flaming Origin continent, energy weapons were too strong. The bodies of the hunters couldn't bear it at all. Therefore, they often had to transform a part of their body into a strong metal material so that they could withstand the impact of energy. However, Emosher didn't need to transform at all. His body had been transformed by the modification liquid, and his strength had long surpassed that of ordinary hunters. In addition, now that he had dragon blood in his body, the strength of his body had greatly increased again. Therefore, his body could easily withstand the impact of energy. In the next few months, Emosher planned to continue sign-in until his level reached level 2 before going to the Flaming Origin continent. However, his evolution points were a little tight just to sign in for a few months. Therefore, he once again condensed his virus clones. With his current strength, he could already condense 100 virus clones. Moreover, the strength of each virus clone had reached level 10 Great Hunter and level 1 Long Yen Shi. With such strength, he could do whatever he wanted on Earth. Emosher scattered these virus clones all over the world and let them kill infected creatures for him to obtain evolution points. One had to know that there were trillions of infected creatures on Earth. If these infected creatures were killed, the evolution points obtained would probably be in the tens of trillions. Therefore, he didn't have to worry about not having enough evolution points. Just like this, he signed in until 3 months. On this day, after Emosher swallowed another 8 drops of blood, his body changed again. Chapter 238. He stayed in the base for 3 months. Emosher stayed in the base for 3 months. During these 3 months he was with Happy every day. The two of them were almost inseparable. Emosher's daily life was basically taken care of by Happy. Now, some of the vegetables planted in the base could be harvested. The people in the base prioritized the best vegetables and sent them to the zombie farm. Although Happy's culinary skills could not be compared to the chefs before the apocalypse, some of the home-cooked dishes had a different taste. Until now, Happy still thought that she did not know how to do anything other than work in the zombie farm. Other people were afraid of the power of the Oracle, so no one dared to mention it in front of Happy. Besides going out with Emosher, Happy did not leave the zombie farm much. Therefore, she did not know that she was an existence that even Emosher could not stop when she went crazy. At the same time, during these 3 months, the small monk became very familiar with the control of the mecha. Now, everyone knew that the small monk was a genius in mecha piloting. Not only was he very talented in piloting the mecha. Furthermore, his talent in the daily maintenance and repair of mecha was something that no one else could compare to. On the 3rd day after getting the mecha, he dismantled the mecha from head to toe and scattered it all over the floor. When Guojutao, who came to inspect, entered the room and saw the parts on the floor, he was so angry that he almost had a heart attack. Mr. Emo handed over such a high-tech mech to you, but you disassembled it into parts in less than 3 days. Are you out of your mind? On the 7th day, the small monk completely restored the mecha. After dismantling and reassembling the mecha, his understanding of the mecha had far surpassed the theoretical knowledge in books. He could operate it more smoothly. 2 months later, Emosher gave the 1,000 spider drones to the small monk. After the small monk got the 1,000 spider drones, he was like a tiger that had grown wings. Although he was only a level 10 psychic, he was still a level 10 psychic. However, with his strength he could control the mecha and cooperate with the spider drones. Even if he ran into a level 10 scavenger, he could fight against them. Now Emosher's strength could crush a level 8 scavenger. His strength had no limit when he went crazy. The little monk could fight against level 10 scavenger with his mecha. In the Fire Dragon continent, this kind of strength could already be considered a strong team. However, Emosher felt that this was not enough. So he signed in for 3 months. Finally, his strength was promoted to LV2. After reaching level 2, he was not very excited about his own strength. What he was most excited about was the Sea Dragon clone. With a thought, his consciousness entered the body of the Sea Dragon clone. He took a look. Species, Mosasaurus, Level 2 Mutated Dire Beast Ability, Evolution by Devouring Dragon Psychic Attack Lightning Attack. the sea dragon clone had devoured too many level 10 mutated beasts before. He should have advanced a long time ago. However, embark had been stuck at level 10 Great Hunter for a long time. Therefore the sea dragon clone was stuck at level 10. When embark had broken through to become a scavenger, the sea dragon clone had naturally been promoted to a level 1 mutant dire beast. Now that embark was a level 2 scavenger, the sea dragon clone had also become a level 2 mutant dire beast. A level 2 mutant dire beast was equivalent to a level 2 scavenger. And in the entire Flaming Land, scavenger hunters were only a small part of the population. Even in a certain force or a certain academy, there were only a few scavenger hunters. Therefore, once one became a scavenger, one would become a true powerhouse. Once one became a scavenger, one could rope in a group, establish a gang and occupy a mountain. And now, the strength of the sea dragon clone was equivalent to a level 2 scavenger. embark finally had the confidence to go to the Flaming Land. The sea dragon clone, the oracle, Happy, the cheetah mecha. All of these made embark full of confidence. Moreover, these were not his greatest trump cards. His greatest trump card was actually in the Flaming Land. Since he was ready to go to the Flaming Land, the next thing was to consider who to take with him. One person or a few people against the entire continent sounded very hot-blooded, but it was not very realistic after all. On the contrary, embark planned to move the entire base directly to the first hunting island. Even if they could do some logistics work, it would be good enough. With them producing food, cooking, washing clothes and so on, he could still live a life on the Flaming Land. And now that the Dragon Palace had been upgraded, their levels would also increase quickly. In the past 3 months, some scavenger hunters had become level 10 scavenger hunters. There were also those psychokinesis that embark had blessed, who had broken through to level 1 psychic masters. He believed that in the near future, the strength of the entire base would definitely not be weaker than the Sandstorm mercenary group. Of course, embark did not want to force them. He called Wuxia over and said to him, "After experiencing so much, you must know that there is another world outside of Earth." Wuxia said in a somewhat feminine voice. "Yes. The people in the base are now guessing that there are aliens. The technology on the equipment of more than 2,000 people is not from Earth at all. And Mr. Mo, your cheetah mech is obviously not from Earth." This has made everyone panic. Some people even said that if the aliens attacked Earth in a large scale, even Mr. Mo may not be able to stop them. Hearing this, embark smiled faintly. "What do you think?" Wuxia was stunned by the question. To be honest, he was willing to believe embark. But if the aliens really did attack, no matter how strong Mr. Mo was, he could not protect the entire Earth alone. embark naturally understood what he meant. He said with a smile, "I plan to take people to the alien planet. Whoever is willing to follow me can go with me." Wuxia was directly stunned. The more than 2,000 aliens that appeared last time were all as powerful as gods. Now everyone in the base was secretly praying that those aliens would not come to Earth again. In their opinion, if those aliens were to come again, it would definitely be a disaster for Earth. But Mr. Mo was going to directly attack the alien planet. Was he going crazy? Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, Wuxia looked into embark's eyes and asked, "Mr. Mo, are you joking?" embark did not directly answer him. Instead he said, "Issue an order that those who are willing to follow me to the alien planet will set off in 3 days. Those who are not willing to go, I won't force them." Wuxia was stunned again. Mr. Mo did not have the slightest intention of joking. So, it was actually true? This. Chapter 239. At embark's request, the news that he was going to attack an alien planet quickly spread throughout the base. The entire base was in an uproar. Are there really aliens? Of course. Since Mr. Mo said so, how could it be fake? But can our bodies adapt to going to an alien planet? If the 2,000 people who came last time were aliens, then wouldn't it be too dangerous to go to an alien planet? What are you afraid of? No matter how powerful the aliens are, can they survive the word death? Besides, isn't Mr. Mo here? When the order was given, the people in the base did not do anything. Instead, they were all discussing it. After all, the aliens had just appeared. Many of them could not accept the fact that aliens had appeared. Now, they were asked to go to an alien planet. It was too hasty and sudden. Most of the people who had such thoughts were older. Firstly, they were conservative. Secondly, they were old and did not want to change places. Was it not good to live the rest of their lives in the base? Why did they have to go to other places to suffer? Of course, there were also some young people and some powerful psychokinesis and hunters. They were born with the desire for adventure. They naturally would not miss the opportunity to go to another planet to see it. Secondly, they also knew that with Mr. Emo in front of them, they would encounter less danger. In the end, after 2 days of discussion, almost half of the people were willing to go to the flaming land with Emo Sure. Almost 50,000 people. On the third day, the people who planned to go with Emo Sure began to pack their things, pack their luggage and say goodbye to their friends and family. On the third day, Emo Sure led these people and waved goodbye to the remaining 50,000 people in the base. The remaining 50,000 people in the base did not know that only 2 years later, they would regret it. Of course, this was a story for later. Emo Sure led the 50,000 people to the coordinates more than 100 kilometers away from the base. Wuxia Tao followed Emo Sure's instructions and took out the 2,500 watches left by the Sandstorm mercenary group and distributed them to the 2,500 people. Emo Sure told them how to operate it. Then he led Happy, the young monk, and the others to click on the teleport button. In the next moment, their figures turned into bluish-white balls of light and disappeared. Just a dozen seconds later, in the teleportation hall of Hunting Island 1 on the Flaming Dawn mainland, more than 2,500 balls of blue and white light slowly condensed into human figures. Emo Sure and the others were already here. Emo Sure immediately scanned the area with his dragon telekinesis. Everything within a radius of 200 kilometers could be seen. According to his investigation, all the creatures on the first hunting island had been infected with the Zero virus, including all the plants. As for the humans on Hunting Island number 1, they were naturally infected with the virus Zero. After that, Emo Sure asked everyone to take off their watches and let Wuxia Tao bring them back to Earth. More than 50,000 people were teleported over in batches. As for Emo Sure, he brought Happy, the young monk, and the others out of the relocation hall. The moment the door to the teleportation hall opened, they saw a scarlet world outside. The trees were red and so was the grass. The pond water was red. The mountains in the distance were also red. When the people who followed Emo Sure saw this scene, they were all secretly shocked. Is this an alien planet? No one answered. Emo Sure did not say anything and continued to walk out. At this time, there was a small bridge over the Scarlet River in front of them. A few zombies were wandering by the bridge. Their skin and flesh were already somewhat rotten. It seemed that with every step they took, a piece of their skin would fall off. Their grayish-white eyes were filled with some kind of desire. Sensing the arrival of humans, they turned their heads and roared from their throats. Roar, roar, from their mouths, which were almost cracked to the back of their heads, one could even see the remnants of rotten flesh hanging on their teeth. Emo Sure opened the blood dragon's eye and looked at these zombies. Species, zombie, level 1 evolved zombie. Emo Sure was slightly stunned. Evolved zombie? The ones on Earth before were mutated zombies, but these were evolved zombies. What was the difference between the two? The system answered and explained, mutated, it may become stronger or it may become weaker. It is uncertain. Evolved, it will definitely become stronger. Emo Sure nodded, indicating that he understood. According to his guess, the strength of a level 1 evolved zombie should be about the same as a level 1 hunter. At this moment, the evolved zombies were already unable to endure their hunger and thirst. One of them leaped and had already taken the lead to move. And its target was Emo Sure, who was at the front. With a leap, it crossed the distance of more than 100 meters. Its speed was far faster than any creature on Earth. Everyone behind Emo Sure was stunned when they saw this scene. Just by pouncing on this zombie, they could feel how powerful this zombie was. If it were any one of them, the only outcome would be to be instantly killed by this zombie. However, Emo Sure lifted his right leg and, at the moment when the evolved zombie jumped over, he fiercely chopped it down. Bang! Under the huge force, the level 1 evolved zombie was directly chopped to the ground. Its entire head exploded. Dark red blood splattered in all directions in a radiating manner. And under its body, the stone ground was directly cracked by Emo Sure's kick. The dark red blood flowed along the cracks and into the ground. The people behind saw how violent Emo Sure was and were all secretly surprised. Mr. Emo was still as violent and powerful as before. Emo Sure opened his mouth and reminded the people behind him. These evolved zombies have extremely strong self-healing factors in their bodies. At least 3 headshots are needed to kill them completely. Hearing this, everyone quickly noted it in their hearts. As for why Mr. Emo had only killed this zombie once, it had already died. No one asked. Nonsense, this was Mr. Emo. It was not strange for anything to happen to Mr. Emo. Of course, they didn't know that Emo Sure's kick just now actually contained energy. In the Flaming Land, ordinary hunters could only release energy through energy weapons. But Emoshur was different. He had the blood of the Titan dragon. The blood of the Titan dragon had transformed the cells in his body, allowing him to release energy as he wished from any part of his body except for energy weapons. With that kick, a huge amount of energy instantly flowed out of the zombie's body. In an extremely short period of time, all of the zombie cells were killed. Naturally, it could not be revived. Chapter 240. The next few evolved zombies were either level 1 or level 2. But to Emoshur, it didn't make much of a difference. When the evolved zombies were about to pounce on him, Emoshur only had to use his mind to control them. In the next moment, the bodies of those evolved zombies suddenly froze on the spot. It was as if they had been immobilized. Then Emoshur's dragons will swept across, and the bodies of those evolved zombies instantly turned into purplish-black powder. Like sand sculptures, they flowed all over the ground. At the same time, Emoshur's dragons will expanded. It enveloped everything within a radius of 50 kilometers. Then, with a thought, all the infected animals, plants, and even microorganisms within a radius of 50 kilometers were turned into purplish-black powder. They were blown away at the same time and flowed all over the ground like sand sculptures. In the end, this radius of 50 kilometers was completely covered by purplish-black powder. The people behind Emoshur only saw that the originally scarlet world turned purplish-black at an extremely fast speed. In the end, they flowed all over the ground like sand sculptures. Their eyes widened. They knew that Mr. Emo was very strong, and his telekinesis was also very strong. They had seen Mr. Emo explode those zombies and even humans into a bloody mist. But now, even these flowers, plants, and trees had turned into purplish-black powder. This was completely beyond their understanding. As far as they knew, only the legendary immortals could change the appearance of the entire world. Naturally, they didn't know that these creatures all had the Zero virus in them. And within each strain of the Zero virus, there was a trace of Emoshur's dragon's will. Therefore, as long as he used his dragon's will, all the Zero virus would die. At this time, Emoshur used his dragon's will to investigate. From a microscopic perspective, he investigated the changes in the surroundings. He saw that there was no longer a trace of the virus in the purplish-black powder that those creatures had turned into. Instead, after their bodies were decomposed, they became nutrients that could be absorbed by plants. It made this land more fertile. It was more suitable for plants to grow. It was estimated that in at most a month, this land would be covered in green plants. Emoshur said to the people behind him, "This land is for you to cultivate." Everyone looked at the purplish-black powder on the ground and were all puzzled. Could such land still be farmed? However, they quickly regained their senses. Since Mr. Emo said that it could be farmed, then it could be farmed. After that, Emoshur led the group forward. After crossing the small bridge and walking for a short distance, they saw a factory-like building. However, this factory looked a little different from the factories on Earth. Although it was a little old, a lot of the paint on the railings, stairs, and door had peeled off. However, in the factory there were some high-tech things everywhere. Disregarding everything else, just the mechas in the factory were an eye-opener for everyone. Of course, these were not combat mechas. They were just some working mechas used in factories. However, these mechas had all stopped working. Emoshur asked the little monk behind him, "Can you make them move?" At this moment, the little monk had a look of surprise on his face. Amitba, what a wonderful thing. He took a few steps forward and carefully observed one of the humanoid mechs. A moment later, he gently pressed the back of the mech's head, and the chip inside popped out. He took out the chip, opened the keyboard at his waist and put the chip down. His fingers danced quickly on the virtual touch keyboard. A moment later. Soon he nodded and said, "The chip is intact. It's just that there's no power." In the Flaming Land there were 3 sources of power. One was solar energy. The second was crystal energy. The third was zombie energy. Solar energy could be used for normal life, but it was somewhat insufficient to power mechas. Zombie energy was to use the tireless nature of zombies to drive them forward to generate electricity. Previously, the electricity of the entire hunting island was generated by zombies. However, compared to Emoshur's ambition, the power generation of zombies was too small. In his vision, he wanted to dominate the entire Flaming Land in the future. That would require a large number of combat mechas. The super batteries on the combat mechas were equivalent to the power generation of a small power plant. This was naturally not something that a few zombies could do. Therefore, Emoshur naturally chose the second one, crystal energy. In the Flaming Land there was a kind of ore. Because this ore looked like a crystal, it contained a huge amount of energy. Therefore it was called crystal energy. Many large factories and military bases used crystal energy as a source of energy. Some of the larger forces had their own crystal energy mines. Of course, Mo and the others had just arrived, and their strength was not absolutely top-notch. It was naturally impossible to fight for the crystal energy mines. Mo shook his head slightly. Everything had to start from scratch. Let's move the virtual dragon palace over first. Thinking of this, Mo said in his mind, "System, move the virtual dragon palace over." The system's voice quickly sounded, "Frowny face, level 2 virtual dragon palace. Requires 50 billion evolution points to move." Cough, 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 cough. Mo coughed violently a few times. Happy, who was beside him, quickly looked at Mo with concern. At the same time he patted Mo chest. Mo shook his head and said, "I'm fine." However, in his heart he had already complained to the system, 50 billion evolution points, you might as well rob it. The system was silent. Mo checked his evolution points in his mind. Fortunately, there were still close to 80 billion. Anyway, now that he was in the flaming land, there were wild beasts everywhere. Killing a level 1 desolate beast would give him 100,000 evolution points. So only 50 billion, I don't care. Let's move. Mo said. In the next moment, the virtual dragon palace quickly appeared in front of him. It quickly covered an area with a radius of 50 kilometers. At this time, not only was the virtual dragon palace's attack and defense much stronger than before, it was also much larger. In Mo mind, the system's notification sounded again, "Frowny face, relocation successful. 50 billion evolution points deducted." Mo couldn't help but feel pain. He once again complained in his heart, "If you want to deduct, do it secretly. Can you not report it again?" After a while, Mo led everyone to the factory's power plant. Since those energy sources were not very practical at the moment, he would try to sign in here and see if there was any solution. System, sign in. The system's voice quickly sounded, "Frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in location, number 1 Hunting Island Power Plant. Sign in reward, Energy Extraction System, Energy Extraction System?" Mo was puzzled and focused his attention on the system backpack. Chapter 241. Mo focused his attention on the energy extraction system in his mind. He saw that it was a very complicated set of equipment. The entire equipment was divided into an extraction chamber, an energy transmission pipeline, a compressor, a filling machine, and so on. Through this set of equipment, the energy in the bodies of desolate beasts, evolved zombies, and even hunters could be extracted for use by the entire base. At the same time, the extracted energy could also be compressed. It could be filled into a super battery. At the same time, there was a construction blueprint in the grid next to the energy extraction system. After Mo carefully read the introduction of the energy extraction system, he couldn't help but smile. What he lacked really came. He was just worrying about energy, but in the end he directly signed into the energy extraction system. At this time, Guojutao had already brought another group of people over. Mo waved at him. Guojutao hurried forward. Mo took out the construction blueprint from his backpack. He said, "Find an engineer to dismantle this set of power generation equipment, then construct according to the blueprint and install this set of equipment." As he spoke, Mo moved his mind. He took out the set of energy extraction equipment from his backpack. There were many parts of this set of equipment, and the open space within a kilometer in front of the factory was completely occupied. Guojutao was puzzled. They had just arrived at the factory, so the power generation equipment should be the most important. Why dismantle it? But he didn't ask any more questions. Mr. Mo naturally had his reasons for doing things. So Guojutao nodded and said, "Yes." Then he turned around and went to look for the engineer in the base. Next, Mo led everyone around the entire factory. The various high-tech equipment in the factory made these earthlings gasp in amazement. Especially the large number of robots in the factory with different shapes, which amazed everyone. As long as there was enough energy to make these robots move, then the labor needed in the base would be very little. This way they would be able to free up time to train. This made them very glad that they could follow Mr. Mo to an alien planet. They thought that the alien planet was full of powerful aliens, and they would probably face a very fierce battle. They didn't expect that there were no other humans in the place they were teleported to. The ready-made factories, robots, and various mechas were all left for them. As for those powerful creatures in front of Mr. Mo, they were just a matter of a sweep of his mind. Therefore they were safer here than on Earth. Then Emoshur went outside and released the sea dragon clone. There were countless wild beasts on the first hunting island. Previously, these dire beasts were only level 1 to level 3. However, now that they had been infected with the Zero virus, their bodies had been strengthened once again. Many of them had broken through to level 5 or even level 6. It was enough for the sea dragon clone to devour. After doing all this, Emoshur returned to the factory again. He chose the best room and made it his and Happy's bedroom. Now that everything had been arranged properly, what he needed to do next was to increase his strength as quickly as possible. No one else had come to Hunting Island 1 yet. However, Emoshur estimated that it wouldn't be long before someone arrived. The most likely culprit was the Sandstorm mercenary group. One had to know that this mercenary group had over 30,000 people. Their captain and several vice-captains had never returned to Hunting Island 1 since they arrived there. They would definitely come looking for him. In fact, Emoshur was right. In fact, more than a month ago, the only remaining vice-captain of the Sandstorm mercenary group couldn't contact the captain and the other vice-captains, so he had already sent a few people to find him. However, these people's strength was very average. Therefore, when they saw the terrifying scene of infected creatures everywhere on Hunting Island 1, they had no idea what was going on here. He hurriedly fled the place in fear. Time passed slowly, but it also passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, Emoshur and the 50,000 people had been in the Flaming Land for more than 2 months. In the past 2 months, Emoshur had checked in all over the first hunting ground and obtained a lot of things. Although most of these things didn't increase his individual strength by much. However, they were extremely beneficial to the development of the base. Not to mention other things, just the seeds of various plants and animals alone were enough for him to get a lot of them. Due to the difference in soil, it was impossible for the seeds from Earth to germinate here. However, the seeds of the vegetables, grains and fruits that Emoshur got from checking in were guaranteed to germinate within 3 days after they were planted. Now, more than 300 acres of land had been reclaimed around the base. On the first 100 acres of land that had been reclaimed, many vegetables had already grown and would ripen in another month. At the same time, the wheat, corn, rice, cotton, and other domestic crops had already sprouted. These crops were originally not in the same season. However, on Hunting Island 1 it was spring all year round. The domestic crops that Emoshur got from the system had no seasonal restrictions at all. Basically, they would mature in half a year. Therefore, no matter what kind of crop it would only take more than 5 months to harvest. Of course, the scale of the entire farm wasn't large at the moment. After all, it was reclaimed from scratch and it relied entirely on manpower. However, as long as the energy extraction equipment was installed, the robots could be driven to work. By then, the scale of the base farm would increase exponentially. On this day, Emoshur doubled his check-in and got another 100 kilograms of wheat seeds. Just as he was about to give these wheat seeds to Guojutao had already arrived. His face was full of excitement. With a somewhat feminine voice, he said, "Mr. Mo, the energy extraction equipment has been installed. Now, we just need to catch some infected creatures to test it." Emoshur nodded. "Well, let them get ready and test it later." Yes. Guojutao left. After only 5 minutes, Emoshur brought more than 50 evolved zombies and more than 100 evolved zombies to the entrance of the energy extraction chamber. He didn't use iron chains to tie these infected creatures. But these infected creatures were very obedient. One by one, they lowered their heads and followed behind Emoshur. It was like a child who had made a mistake at school and was brought home by their parents. Everyone was surprised when they saw this scene. After more than a month, they already knew how powerful these infected creatures were. In front of these infected creatures, these people were basically vegetables. But now, these infected creatures were so obedient in front of Mr. Mo. What was going on? Of course, they didn't know that this was because Emoshur had used 2 skills to summon zombies and summon wild beasts. These infected creatures were naturally obedient to Emoshur. Chapter 242. Under everyone's surprised gaze, Emoshur brought those powerful infected creatures to the door of the extraction cabin. The extraction cabin was a cylindrical, enclosed space with a radius of more than 500 meters. The entire cylindrical wall was transparent. On the wall, there were 10 1-meter diameter pipes connected to a converter in another room through the ceiling. Emoshur came to the door of the cabin, and the door opened to both sides. Emoshur turned his head and said to the infected creatures behind him, Go in. Those infected creatures immediately obediently entered the extraction cabin. After the cabin door closed, Emosher nodded to the engineer. "Tua, you can start." The engineer surnamed Bao replied, "Yes." As he spoke, he gave orders to the few people on the control panel behind him. Those people immediately began to get busy. Soon there was a roar in the extraction cabin. Whoosh! Along with the roar, fiery red energy was immediately extracted from those infected creatures. Whether it was the evolved zombies or the desolate beast. At the same time as the energy in their bodies was extracted. Their bodies were like deflated balloons, quickly shriveling. Soon only skin and bones were left. When the people outside saw this scene, an inexplicable panic arose in their hearts. They couldn't help but think about what would happen if someone entered the extraction cabin. However, skin and bones were not the end. The strength of the extraction cabin was that it didn't just extract the energy in these creatures. It also included the heat in these creatures' bodies, and even the weak heat emitted from their cells. In the end, when all the energy and heat in the bodies of these infected creatures were extracted, their bodies, including their fur and clothes, turned into black powder. However, this was not the end. At this time, on the floor of the extraction cabin, countless small holes as thick as an arm opened. A strong suction force came from inside, sucking in all the black powder. This black powder would enter the warehouse on the other side of the pipeline, be transported to the farmland, and be sprinkled on the farmland as fertilizer. Everything on the infected creatures was squeezed dry, leaving nothing behind. This was the terrifying part of the extraction cabin. At this time, the energy extracted by the extraction cabin had already passed through the pipeline and arrived at the conversion room on the other side. The energy was converted into electricity through the conversion. Following the order of the contractor, the main power switch in the factory was turned on. The next moment, all the lights in the factory lit up. Whoosh! The more than 50,000 people in the factory immediately boiled with excitement. When they were in the base, they had to conserve electricity. But at least there was still 2 hours of electricity at night. However, after arriving at Hunting Island 1, there was no electricity at all. These days lasted for more than 2 months. Now it was finally electrified. How could they not be excited? Then the worker took Mosher to another filling room. In the filling room, there were already 2 cylindrical batteries that had been filled. Each battery was emitting a fiery red fluorescence. The contractor opened the clasp and took out a battery. Her eyes were filled with joy as she said to Emosher, "You're right. Mr. Emo, this is the first super battery that we've filled. The power in this battery is enough to last our entire base for a month." Emosher nodded and beckoned to the little monk behind him. The little monk hurried forward. Emosher handed the battery to him. The little monk didn't need Emosher to say anything. He already understood what Emosher meant. He went behind a lifting robot outside the door. He put the super battery into it. Then he turned on the virtual keyboard and his fingers flew. The next moment, the eyes of the lifting robot suddenly lit up with blue light. Then he strode towards the empty space in the middle of the factory, where a pile of dismantled waste was. He picked up a stone slab that weighed more than 10 tons and walked out. He threw the stone slab into the filling hopper of the huge grinder that looked like the mouth of a beast. Under the operation of the worker next to him, the grinder began to work. The contractor said, "This super battery is enough for this robot to use for 2 months." Seeing this scene, everyone clapped excitedly. With the super battery, all robots and mechas would be able to move in the future. Their work efficiency would increase by a large margin. For the next 10 days, Emosher would summon hundreds of infected creatures into the base and into the extraction chamber every day. He no longer needed to personally lead the team. People saw these infected creatures enter the base automatically and enter the extraction chamber automatically. All of them admired Emosher from the bottom of their hearts. Only Mr. Emo could have such a godly method. Soon all the robots and mechas in the base were equipped with super batteries. Therefore, whether it was production or planting, the efficiency of all aspects was greatly improved. 2 months later, these agricultural robots had already cultivated 5,000 mu of land. This land was enough to produce food for 50,000 people. Now all aspects of the base were on the right track. Due to the many living robots, people's lives were much more convenient. The super battery produced by the energy extraction system was enough for the entire base to use for a long time. On this day, the contractor came to look for Emosher. He said to Emosher, "Mr. Emo, our current stock of super batteries is enough for the entire base to use for a year. So, I suggest that we can use this excess energy in other aspects. For example, developing technology." Emosher smiled and shook his head, No, continue to produce batteries. The contractor was stunned and said, Mr. Mo, if we want to continue to improve the living standards of our base, we must develop technology, otherwise, Mo sure interrupted the contractor and said, mastering energy is equivalent to mastering everything. As for technology, it's too troublesome to develop. It's better to plunder. Plunder? The contractor was puzzled. He naturally didn't know Mo Sure's plan. Mo Sure intended to build a mecha army. If the base wanted to develop, it must improve its strength. At present, it would take at least 10 years for the strength of the humans in the base to reach the level of a desolate hunter, even with the acceleration of the Dragon Palace. Instead of this, it was better to build a mecha army. And the most important thing for a mecha army was sufficient energy. This was the reason why Mo Sure could produce batteries without limit. As for where to find the mechas or how to produce them, Mo Sure had a rough idea in his mind. Looking at the blue sky outside the window and the old porcupine flying by, Mo Sure's heart was full of longing. Imagine thousands of mechas, equivalent to the level of a desolate hunter, sweeping across the sky. How domineering would that be? Chapter 243. The war in the future was ultimately a war of energy. And now, Mo Sure had mastered energy that was ahead of the flaming continent. One had to know that solar energy and crystalline energy were still commonly used on the flaming origin continent. Mo Sure's energy extraction technology was completely beyond their plane. With energy, the next step was to develop combat mechas. Mo Sure thought that he should be able to obtain the technology and equipment to make combat mechas by signing in at the place where combat mechas were manufactured. But he had just arrived and did not know much about the flaming continent. So he decided to put this plan aside for the time being. Of course, with the little monk's intelligence and the knowledge and experience of the contractor, he also had a ready-made cheetah mech. It was not difficult to come up with the technology to manufacture combat mechas. But Mo Sure thought that the system's products would be more advanced than theirs. So he planned to sign in at the place where combat mechas were manufactured when he had the chance in the future. The most important thing now was to increase his and the base's strength as much as possible. It would be safer to sign in at those places when his strength increased. Therefore, for the next period of time, Mo Sure signed in every day in the virtual Dragon Palace. 8 drops of dragon blood every day. He estimated that he would be able to level up again in a year or so. At the same time, he could also get more than 100 million evolution points by summoning infected creatures into the extraction chamber every day. In addition to the evolution points from the Sea Dragon clone and the clone on Earth, he could get more than 300 million evolution points every day. He estimated that in 2 months he would get more than 10 billion evolution points. At that time, the system would be able to level up again. On this day, Mo Sure had nothing to do, so he was enjoying the scenery of Hunting Island No. 1 with happy. At the same time, about 25,000 people were flying toward Hunting Island No. 1 on hoverboards. These 25,000 people were all the remaining members of the Sandstorm Mercenary Group. The person in the lead was the only remaining vice captain of the Sandstorm Mercenary Group. Level 7 Hunter Ding Ziqing. This person was a middle-aged man who looked rough but was actually very careful. That was why Shachi let him stay in the group when he left. Beside him was a young man. This young man had long black hair that was as shiny as a cow's lick. Her white clothes were as clean and white as the new bedsheets in the hospital. Ding Ziqing said flatteringly. Young Master Wu Erden, as the young master of the Black Pack gang, you don't have to come to this remote hunting island. The white-clothed Werdan laughed out loud and said, That's right. How can this young master compare to those hedonistic sons of rich parents? My father didn't send me to Hunting Island 1 to have fun. Ding Ziqing nodded repeatedly. That's right, that's right. Those playboys are not even worthy of carrying young Master Wu Erden's shoes. Erden smiled politely and looked in the direction of Hunting Island No. 1. Tell me more about Hunting Island 1. Ding Ziqing nodded and said, That was about 5 months ago. Our leader, along with a few other vice leaders and 5,000 brothers, came to Hunting Island No. 1. After that, we lost contact. When I sent people over to investigate, they found that this place had already been occupied by infected creatures. Through the surveillance drones, there are almost no living people here. So I thought that our Sandstorm Mercenary Group would join hands with your gang to clean up this Hunting Island No. 1. Don't think that this Hunting Island No. 1 is worthless. In fact, our leader has already said that there is a crystal source vein under this Hunting Island No. 1. And the reserves are very rich. Wu Dan nodded and asked again. Since there is a crystal source vein, why didn't the island owner at that time exploit it? Ding Jiqing smiled and said, Young Master Wu Dan, the strength of Hunting Island number 1 before was only considered insignificant in the entire continent. Even if they could exploit it, they couldn't defend it. The white-clothed Wu Dan nodded, You're right. They have the vein but no strength, and our Black Pack gang has the strength but no vein. Now that Hunting Island number 1 is deserted, we just happen to occupy this hunting island. Speaking of this, he glanced at Ding Jiqing next to him without a trace. He said, Don't worry, you found the vein here. Of course, your Sandstorm mercenary group will benefit. This was what Ding Jiqing wanted to hear. He quickly put on a smile and nodded. Thank you, young Master Wu Dan. As they spoke, they had already arrived above Hunting Island number 1. They didn't choose to land directly. Instead, they released more than 500 drones to explore the island. Through the videos taken by the drones, they found that the island had basically turned blood red. The animals were blood red. The plants were blood red. The mountains were blood red. The water was also blood red. It was as if this was a blood red world. But after a while, 2 drones flew above the center of the island and made a shocking discovery. They saw that there was a circular ground in the middle of the blood red. On this circular ground, there were large patches of green plants. On the blood red island, there was a patch of green land with a radius of 50 kilometers. This made Wu Dan and Ding Jiqing very surprised. When the camera zoomed in, they could see that it was basically all crops. In the middle of the fields there was a large factory. From the sky they could see that there were robots and humans in both the fields and the factories. When Ding Jiqing saw this, he was both shocked and terrified. He quickly explained to Wu Dan next to him, Young Master Wu Dan, the last time I sent people to investigate here, they were in a hurry and didn't explore the center. I didn't mean to deceive the Black Pack gang. Wu Dan smoothed out the corner of his shirt that was fluttering in the wind and smiled kindly, There's always an accident. It's inevitable. Who do you think they are? Ding Jiqing thought for a while and replied, It should be the original owner of Hunting Island number 1 Beale. I guess maybe some kind of virus broke out here and they can't solve it. But he can't bear to move away from Hunting Island number 1, so he's holed up in this factory. Because the virus broke out on Hunting Island number 1, communication was also destroyed, so we can't contact them. At this point, Ding Jiqing added another sentence. Of course, it's also possible that after the virus broke out, the entire Hunting Island was occupied by zombies and infected creatures. Someone else discovered the mineral veins here first, and they were the first to get here. At this point, his face became a little serious. To be able to survive in this place where infected creatures were everywhere, the strength of this faction must not be underestimated. Wu Dan smiled and nodded. Then he said a domineering sentence. No matter which faction dares to steal Black Pack Gang's mineral vein, we'll destroy them. 244 Python genetic weapon. Wu Dan looked at the green field in the middle of the Scarlet Hunting Island in the video. He said a domineering sentence. No matter which faction dares to steal Black Pack Gang's mineral vein, we'll destroy them. This was the style of the Black Pack Gang. Domineering, domineering. When Ding Jiqing heard this, he also nodded his head. Then he said to the mercenary controlling the drone, Check the strength of the entire base. The mercenary nodded and his fingers danced on the keyboard. Soon, the drone released an invisible wave that spread throughout the base. Then, according to the reflected wave, everyone's strength was accurately measured. Looking at the data on the screen, Ding Jiqing doubted his eyes. Level 2 Hunter. 1 person. Great Hunter. 133 people. More than 30,000 hunters. 2 Level 1 Psychic Masters. The rest are all zombie hunters and psychokinesis? The others heard this and looked at each other. Damn, this strength was too weak. Any Level 3 hunter from their mercenary group could destroy this factory. Dan flicked his hair and asked, Is there a problem with the drone? Ding Jiqing nodded. It's possible. This was the only explanation. Otherwise, how could this group of unbelievably weak people be able to defend this place in a place filled with infected creatures and desolate beasts? Send a few more drones to check it out, Ding Jiqing said. The keyboard player quickly nodded. After a while, the results came back. Everyone quickly looked at the screen. It's exactly the same as before. But this is impossible. Ding Jiqing said, although the people on the first hunting island were weak, they couldn't be this weak. Dan waved his hand domineeringly. In that case, let's go directly to the factory and destroy them. Ding Jiqing was very careful and said cautiously, Master Wu Erdan, this is a bit strange. Let's figure it out first. Wu Erdan smiled and asked, how many hunters above level 3 in your mercenary group? How many psychic masters above level 3? Ding Jiqing replied, there are more than 3,000 hunters above level 3. There are more than 200 greedy masters above level 3. Wu Erdan smiled. Any one of them could easily destroy this lousy place. Now there are more than 3,200 people. In front of absolute strength, any conspiracy is a joke. What are you afraid of? Ding Jiqing heard this and nodded. Master Wu Erdan is right. Then he said to all the mercenaries behind him, go to the center of the hunting island and destroy that factory. Although he was still a little worried, he couldn't refuse Master Wu Erdan's request. And Master Wu Erdan was right. In front of absolute strength, any conspiracy was a joke. After a while, these more than 25,000 people had already arrived above the base. They looked down at the humans below with a disdainful smile on their faces. To them, any one of the people below was a noob. At the same time, the people in the fields below who were controlling the robots to farm also noticed the black mass of humans flying over from the sky. They were all shocked. Oh no, there are intruders. They still remembered that when they were on Earth, there were more than 2,000 people floating above their heads, looking down at them from a high vantage point. They were like a group of insufferably arrogant immortals, looking down on all living beings. Now these insufferably arrogant guys appeared again. But last time Mr. Mo was not in the base. This time Mr. Mo was in the factory not far away. Thinking of this, everyone felt a lot more at ease. Someone quickly reported to the factory with a communicator. Intruders, intruders. Soon the people above the factory also came out. They looked up at the sky, which was like a group of dark clouds. Just like when they were on Earth, they looked up to that group of people. But the difference was that at that time, there was only fear, shock, and despair in their hearts. But now they were only curious. They were curious about what this group of people was doing here. As for fear and despair, there was no trace of it. Happy and Mr. Mo were here. If these people dared to make a move, they would be courting death. At the same time, Wu Jutao found Mo Sure in the factory. He reported, Mr. Mo, there are intruders. Rough estimate, there are more than 20,000 people. Mo Sure took a sip of the tea that Happy had just brewed and nodded. Well, not bad. Wu Jutao looked at Mo Sure's relaxed appearance and knew that he did not have to worry too much. With Mr. Mo's strength, it should not be a problem to deal with these people. Thinking of this, he said, Mr. Mo, I'll go out first. Mo Sure shook his head and said with a chuckle, let's take a look together. As he said that, he clapped his hands. On one of the walls of the room, the surveillance screen of the entire base suddenly appeared. Mo Sure said, above the factory. The screen immediately changed to the top of the base. In the screen, more than 20,000 people were looking at the base below with disdain. Wu Jutao could not help but feel nervous and asked, Mr. Mo, don't we need to go out? Mo Sure took a sip of tea and said again, just watch. Although Wu Jutao did not understand why, since Mo Sure said that he could just watch, he was happy to be idle. At the same time in the sky, the more than 20,000 people were looking down at the base. That Erden stroked the bangs in front of his forehead, glanced at the ants below and said, let's start. Ding Jiqing replied, yes, young Master Erden. Behind Ding Jiqing, a level 5 hunter volunteered to fight. Leader, I can do it alone. You and your brothers, as well as young Master Erden, can watch the show from the side. Ding Jiqing nodded, okay. Sending a level 5 hunter to deal with the ants below was already giving them a lot of face. That level 5 hunter received the order and immediately flashed a genetic weapon on his right arm. It was actually a 100-meter-long python-shaped genetic weapon. He was in the air and the genetic weapon on his right arm was swung downwards. He shouted, you're just an ant. The next moment, that python-shaped genetic weapon was like a 100-meter-long thick pillar, smashing down towards the base. In his eyes, there was already a bloodthirsty gaze. He had not killed anyone for a few months. Today he was going to have a good time. However, at this moment, a strange change occurred. When his genetic weapon smashed into the air, it seemed to have smashed into an invisible barrier. Bang, not only did it not smash down. Instead it was bounced back. Luckily he withdrew his strength quickly. Otherwise, when it bounced back, it would have smashed his head and made him bleed. If a level 5 hunter's head was smashed by his own genetic weapon, that would be a joke. Chapter 244. A level 5 hunter's all-out attack not only did not cause any damage to the base below, but his genetic weapon also bounced back. And he almost hit his own head. This made everyone a little surprised. Old 8, what's going on? You can't even handle a group of rookies? What are you doing? Some people also saw that something was wrong and asked, Old 8, what's going on? Old 8's face was ugly and he shook his head. Nothing. Losing face in front of so many people, especially in front of young Master Wu Erden, was something he would never allow. He straightened his body and said, that was just a warm-up. After that, his genetic weapon shrunk to half a meter long. Then the entire genetic weapon lit up with a glaring red and white light. Everyone was stunned. He was going to use an energy weapon. Facing a group of rookies, he was going to use an energy weapon. Did Old 8 eat shit? Old 8 naturally guessed what everyone was thinking, but that strange scene just now made him have to be careful. Since he could not smash down, then he could only use an invincible energy weapon. Soon, at the tip of his energy weapon, a fiery red light shot out. It instantly attacked the crowd below. However, the fiery red ray of light was unable to descend any further when it was halfway there. Then above the entire base below, a light shield appeared. This light shield seemed to be made up of countless hexagons the size of houses. It covered the entire base. At this time, no matter how much strength Old 8 used, his energy could not break through the light shield. When the other mercenaries saw this, they were all shocked. This small base's defense was strong enough. Could even block the energy beam of a level 5 hunter. Old 8 saw this and frowned. The energy in his body surged and the second energy beam was about to form. However, at this time, a black shadow suddenly shot out from the base. Old 8 saw this and quickly wanted to dodge. However, the speed of the black shadow far exceeded Old 8's reaction ability. It instantly pierced through Old 8's chest. It directly pierced through Old 8's body. Then, the black shadow flew forward for thousands of meters before landing on the ground. It was stuck on the ground at an angle. As for Old 8's body, it was like an eagle that had been shot and fell to the ground. Soon he fell into the light barrier. At that moment, everyone was greatly alarmed. They looked at the black shadow that had hit Old 8. It was an arrow. No, to be exact, it should be a spear. Although it looked like an arrow, it was more than 3 meters long. Its entire body was pitch black. Under the sunlight, it emitted a metallic luster. The shape of the arrow was very peculiar. The tail feathers of the arrow looked like a pair of small wings. Everyone in the mercenary group was shocked. The person who could throw this long arrow could kill a level 5 hunter in one hit, and the level 5 hunter didn't even have time to react. So this person's strength should be at least a level 7 hunter. This completely contradicted the results of the drone's investigation. At the same time, in Mo Shi's office in the factory. When Guo Jutao saw this scene, he was also very puzzled. In the base, other than Mr. Mo, could it be that there was another expert that they did not know about? Thinking of this, he could not help but take a look at Mo Shi. At this time, Mo Shi was still sipping tea with a relaxed smile, casually staring at the screen. At this time in the sky. When Ding Zhiqing saw this scene, he frowned slightly. In this small base there was a hidden expert. And in some way he avoided the detection of their drone. Sure enough, no matter at any time he could not be careless. He took a look at Erden next to him. He saw that Erden was also slightly surprised. But this surprise was just a flash. Then he laughed. This broken base, there is a hidden expert. In this case, let's cut the Gordian knot. Let's see how long this hidden expert can hide. When Ding Zhiqing heard this, he naturally understood Erden's meaning. He said, Master Erden, don't worry, I will let people take care of this broken base. As he said this, he waved to all the brothers behind him. Everyone do it. The execution ability of these mercenaries of the Sandstorm Mercenary Group was beyond doubt. In the next moment, the 25,000 people actually took action at the same time. All the hunters' genetic weapons lit up, and at the same time, they attacked the light shield below. All the psychic power of the Grand Psychic Masters also spread out together. They wanted to find the weakness of this energy light shield. However, very quickly, reality slapped them in the face once again. All their genetic weapons, and even many people's energy weapons, landed solidly on that energy light shield. And the result was, whether it was their genetic weapon attack, their energy weapon attack, or the psychic power of the Grand Psychic Masters, none of them could penetrate that energy light shield. And they could not cause any damage to that light shield. On the contrary, from within the energy light shield, huge black arrows were shot out one after another. Puff, puff, puff. Every time an arrow was shot out, a mercenary's body was pierced. and it was the kind that was directly killed. In the beginning they only suspected that there was a hidden expert in the base. But soon they found out that they were wrong. Because more and more huge black arrows were shot out from the base. They were shot out in groups. And these mercenaries, whether they were hunters or grand psychic masters, in the face of those black arrows there was only one result: death. Until now they only knew. In the base there was a group of experts hidden. And they were experts whose strength was far beyond theirs. In just a short while, more than 2,000 of them had been killed in an instant. And the most frightening thing was that so many people had died, but they did not even see the shadow of the opponent. Young Master Erden, there are many hidden experts here, let's retreat quickly. Ding Zhiqing shouted while protecting Erden. At this time, Erden no longer had his previous pride and arrogance. This small base below actually hid so many experts. Facing such experts, if they did not escape now, when would they? Thinking of this, he flipped his black hair and shouted, "Let's go!" Ding Zhiqing quickly called a group of brothers over to protect Erden and quickly escaped from this place. Behind them, the soldiers of the Sandstorm mercenary group were pierced by the huge black arrows one by one and fell down. Soon they escaped 50 kilometers away. They thought that they were already safe. However, the huge black arrows were still shooting out from behind. There were still hunters who were killed in an instant. Everyone was shocked. This F***king killing range was too big. They had already escaped 50 kilometers away, but it was still not safe. Keep running? Ding Zhiqing quickly shouted. Chapter 245. The sky above the Scarlet Hunting Island number 1 was filled with humans, like a dark cloud. But at this moment these humans were all panicking. They quickly fled into the distance. Behind them giant black arrows were flying. Every arrow would penetrate a mercenary's body, killing him instantly. No matter what trump cards they had, they were just a joke in front of the giant black arrows. Some people's genetic weapons were shields, but their genetic weapons were easily penetrated by the giant black arrows. Some people's genetic weapons were a complete set of armor, but their armor could not withstand a single blow from the giant black arrows. This was the terrifying part of the Virtual Dragon Palace's attack. As long as one was targeted by the virtual arrow tower of the Virtual Dragon Palace, one would be in extreme danger within 100 kilometers. What the hell is this place? Erden cursed as he fled. As a level 4 hunter, the panic in his heart was far greater than that of the others. He had thought that coming to Hunting Island number 1 would be a relaxing and enjoyable thing. He had thought of it as a vacation. But he did not expect that there were people on Hunting Island number 1 and that they were so strong. If he had known, he would rather be forced to train at home than come to this godforsaken place. Finally, after they had fled for more than 100 kilometers, there were no more black arrows coming from behind. They finally heaved a sigh of relief. Looking at the Sandstorm mercenary group again. They had already lost more than 3,000 people. Ding Zhiqing's face was extremely ugly. They had come to Hunting Island number 1 with full confidence because they wanted to occupy the island and not leave anyone else a chance. But they did not expect such a strong existence to be hidden on Hunting Island number 1. They had lost more than 3,000 people before they even saw the shadow of their opponent. This was F***king ridiculous. Erden glanced behind him and said with lingering fear, "That's right. This place is too creepy. When I go back, I'll talk to my old man and ask him to send people to flatten this godforsaken place." Ding Zhiqing quickly nodded. "Yes, our Sandstorm mercenary group can't handle this place. If we want to get the crystal source vein, we need the strong people from the Black Tua gang." Erden nodded and said, "Don't worry. Once I go back, I'll ask my old man to send people over." Ding Zhiqing quickly said, that's the best." Then he looked behind him. "Young Master Erden, this place is too close to the first hunting island. It's still not safe. It wouldn't be good if the experts there chased after them. Let's hurry back to the mercenary group first." Then, more than 20,000 of them escorted Erden and fled into the distance. Soon they were more than 400 kilometers away from base number 1. Hunting Island number 1 Mo Shir's office. Guo Jutao couldn't help but smile when he saw those people running away in a panic from the video. The people of the Flaming Dawn continent had always thought of themselves as superior and superior. Therefore, every time they arrived at the base, they would act high and mighty as if they were gods. This made all of them very unhappy. Today, everyone in the base couldn't help but feel refreshed when they saw those people fleeing miserably. But what puzzled Guo Jutao was who was the one who did it. Where did that energy barrier come from? But before he could ask, Emosure had already put down his teacup. At the same time, a faint light began to appear between the fingers of his right hand. This light was only the size of a sesame seed. It was blood red. At first, the light was very weak, far less than the light of a match. But gradually, this ray of light became stronger. It gradually became brighter than a match. Slowly, it became brighter than a candle. Then it became brighter than a bonfire. After a full 10 minutes, this blood-red light seemed to be more dazzling than the sun. The whole office was dyed blood red by the light. In the center of the light, there was still a sesame seed-sized light spot. However, Guojutao only took a glance at it and immediately felt a chill down his spine. He didn't even dare to take a second look at it. This small light spot seemed to come from the depths of hell, carrying a biting cold murderous aura and a monstrous bloodthirsty aura. "This is?" Guojutao asked in panic. "Telekinesis." Emosure only said 2 words in a bland tone. However, these 2 words completely subverted Guojutao's understanding. In his knowledge, telekinesis was completely invisible and intangible. It was just a human's brain waves. However, telekinesis was much stronger than a human's brain waves. Telekinesis was invisible and intangible. It could not be seen or touched. But now, Emosure had condensed a sesame seed-sized light spot in his hand, and he actually said that this was telekinesis. How was this possible? In fact, this was not Emosure's telekinesis but Dragon's will. After he compressed all his Dragon's will to the limit, he formed such a small Dragon's will light spot. Then Emosure flicked his right middle finger gently. Whoosh! That small light spot immediately left his finger. It instantly passed through the window and flew towards the sky. The small light spot emitted a blood-red light that seemed to be more dazzling than the sun. This blood-red light quickly illuminated the entire base. Everyone who was busy with their work was stunned. Because the light was too dazzling, they couldn't see the blood-red light spot at all. They could only see the blood-red light that filled the sky. This blood-red light that filled the sky looked like a scene of doomsday. However, this situation only lasted for less than 3 seconds. Soon, the blood-red light that filled the sky flew into the distance at an extremely fast speed. Because it was too fast, people could only see a huge blood-red light in front of them, with a blood-red tail more than 10 kilometers long behind it. It was like a blood-red comet. This blood-red comet cut through the sky and quickly disappeared into the horizon. Everyone in the base was shocked to the point of being dumbfounded. They didn't know that this was Emosure's Dragon's will. They only thought that this was a natural phenomenon. What the hell is this? Does anyone know that this is a normal natural phenomenon in the Flaming Dawn continent? This is too shocking. This is too shocking. At the same time, 500 kilometers to the east of the base, the 22,000 people of the Sandstorm mercenary group had landed on the ground to rest. A mercenary said, "We've escaped 500 kilometers. We're finally safe." Another mercenary nodded. "As long as the hidden expert in the base doesn't chase us out, we'll be safe." Judging from the situation captured by the drone just now, the hidden expert really didn't chase us out. At the same time, Erden also took a few breaths. He calmed down a little. Looking at the direction of the first hunting island in the distance, he felt a little angry. It wasn't easy to get a job, but he didn't expect to encounter a mysterious expert. He would be scolded by the old man when he went back this time. Damn it, the next time he came out, he would bring a combat suit and raze this place to the ground. However, just as this thought appeared in his mind, he suddenly saw a blood-red light coming from the sky above the first hunting island. Chapter 246. On a small island 500 kilometers away from the first hunting island. Although it was called a small island, it had a radius of more than 30 kilometers. At this time, more than 20,000 people landed on this small island that almost no one had ever been to before. The person in the lead was naturally Wu Erdan, who was wearing a snow-white robe. Ding Zhiqing next to him said carefully, "Young Master Wu Erdan, we were lucky to be able to escape this time." Erdan looked in the direction of the first hunting island and sneered. "They were unlucky to be able to escape this time. When I go back this time, I'll ask my old man for a few mechas. We'll raze this place to the ground one by one." He said the last few words with gritted teeth. Obviously, he was very upset about losing face today. After all, the Black Pack gang was the biggest force within a radius of 100,000 kilometers. And as the young master of the Black Pack gang, no matter where he went, those people had to bow to him and flatter him. He didn't expect to be humiliated in such a desolate place. Not only would he be scolded by his old man when he went back, he would also be laughed at by his half-brother. He was angry and naturally wanted to raze this place to the ground. Ding Zhiqing next to him nodded and said, Of course. With the strength of the Black Pack gang, they could easily send a few mechas to raze this place to the ground. What hidden powerhouse? In front of the mechs he's just trash. While talking, Wu Erdan suddenly saw the direction of the first hunting island. A blood-red light was flying in this direction. At the front of this blood-red light was a huge fireball, to be exact, a blood-red fireball. Behind it was a long tail. It looked like a blood-red comet. But this comet was extremely bright. Even the sun in the sky was not as bright as this blood-red comet. Its blood-red light almost dyed half of the sky red. From afar, it dyed the sky and the ground like a sea of blood. And its body was like a deadly comet that rushed out of the sea of blood. Just one look was enough to instill fear in people's hearts. What the hell is that? Behind them, exclamations of surprise could be heard one after another. As a LV7 hunter, Ding Zhiqing was particularly sensitive to that kind of fear. He felt as if all the 36,000 hairs on his body were standing on end. After becoming a level 7 hunter, he had not felt such extreme fear for a long time. In his fear he couldn't help but cry out. Run. Before he finished speaking, he had already activated his hoverboard shoes. At this time he didn't even care about Wu Erdan, who had been treating him carefully. Hearing this, the rest of the people hurriedly activated their hoverboards and fled into the distance. However, how could their speed compare to the speed of a comet? In just 3 short seconds the blood-red comet came crashing down on them. Boom. At this moment the scene seemed to freeze. Time seemed to last forever. Nothing else could be seen between heaven and earth. Blood-red light filled the entire space. This situation lasted for more than 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, the blood-red light slowly dissipated. The sky returned to its original blue color. Once again the sea was converted to the azure color. It was as if nothing had happened. However, the small island with a radius of more than 30 kilometers that those people had stopped at had disappeared. A large amount of seawater was flowing toward the place where the small island had been. And dozens of kilometers away, huge waves of 100 meters high were rapidly spreading in all directions. It was like a huge wave caused by a tsunami. In the rolling waves, countless dead fish and prawns could be seen being washed up and rolled down. This was the horror of the Dragon Mind Comet. 500 kilometers was 1,000 miles. Taking a person's head from 1,000 miles away was a child's play in front of Emosure. His Dragon Mind Comet could directly kill tens of thousands of people from 1,000 miles away. Compressing the huge dragon mind to a critical point and then flicking it out. And Emosure had already left a trace of dragon mind on those people. In this way, with the precise guidance of the dragon mind, let alone 500 kilometers, even if they escaped 1,000 kilometers they could still be killed. Thinking of this, Emosure chuckled. He picked up the teacup again and slowly took a sip. Guojutao, who was next to him, had already guessed what Emosure had done. He asked, Mr. Mo, they are all dead? Emosure did not speak. He held the teacup, blew the tea leaves on it and nodded slightly. However, Guojutao, who was next to him, was shocked. Those people had all left on flying skateboards. According to the flying skateboard speed of 1 kilometer per second, they would have already been 500 kilometers away. Mr. Mo could actually kill more than 20,000 people from 500 kilometers away? What kind of method was this? This was the method of a god. Thinking of this, Guojutao's admiration for Emosure increased a little. After a moment of amazement, Guojutao said, Mr. Mo, then I won't disturb your rest. Emosure nodded. Guojutao left. At this time, Emosure really needed to rest. Although it was just a small dragon mind sesame seed. It had consumed all of his dragon mind. With the current size of his dragon mind, it would take at least 2 or 3 months for him to fully recover. One use of the Dragon Mind Comet would have to cool down for 2 or 3 months. It seemed that this skill had to be used carefully in the future. Emosure shook his head helplessly. His face was slightly pale. He took out dozens of bottles of Dragon Mind Recovery Potion from his backpack. Gulp, gulp, gulp. He felt that the feeling of weakness just now had eased a little. However, it was just a relief. With the current size of his Dragon Mind, it was impossible to fully recover with just a few bottles of Dragon Mind Recovery Potion. He was afraid that he would have to wait for the system to level up and see if he could reward him with an enhanced version of Dragon Mind Recovery Potion. After doing this, Emosher went through the memories of the two people that he had just plundered in his mind. He had just plundered the memories of Erden and Ding Zhiqing. In fact, from the memories of Shachi that he had plundered before, he knew that there was a crystal source vein under the first hunting island. It was just that mining the crystal source vein was too costly, so he had not done it. He did not expect that Ding Zhiqing also knew about the vein. He also told the Black Pack Gang. It seemed that it would not be long before the people of the Black Pack Gang came here. Although Emosher was not interested in the crystal source vein. Even if his own things were to rot in his hands, he would not let others take them for free. Chapter 247. Macho had killed the son of the leader of the Black Pack Gang. It wouldn't be long before the Black Pack Gang found this place. As far as he knew, the leader of the Black Pack Gang was a level 9 hunter. Even with his current strength, it would be difficult to deal with him. Moreover, the Black Pack Gang had 2 mechas on the surface. In fact, they already had 6 combat mechas in their possession. Emosher was now considering how to incorporate the 6 mechas without destroying them. Thinking of this, he asked someone to find the little monk. The little monk was holding a game console with his head lowered. His hands didn't stop at all. His bald head was wrapped in a bandage with 4 crooked red words written on it. On the left was try, and on the right was pass. In the middle was a Buddhist symbol. The game console in his hand. It wasn't a game console from Earth, but a game console from the flaming continent. There were 2 handles on both sides. As long as the buttons were pressed, a virtual screen would pop up in the center. The little monk had accidentally found this in a dormitory. Ever since he discovered this game console, he spent almost half of his time playing games every day. Emosher didn't care much about him. As long as it didn't affect his work, he could play as much as he wanted. When the little monk saw Emosher, he chuckled. Hee Ba, good job. Boss Missouri, you were looking for me? In the entire base, almost everyone called Emosher Mr. Emo. Only the little monk called Emosher Boss Missouri. This was a huge contrast with his appearance. Emosher asked, "After all this time, how much do you know about the computers of the flaming continent?" The little monk chuckled and said, "Let's put it this way. As long as you can find a game on the flaming continent, I can crack it. Boss, do you want to play? The game I'm playing now directly turns on the invincible god of death mode. Kill your way through, broken limbs flying, blood splattering everywhere. It's so cool." Emosher was a bit speechless. That's not like a monk. The little monk chuckled and scratched his bald head. Then he put his palms together and made a sound. Ba, that's good. Boss, do I look like one now? Emosher was amused and said with a smile, "Brat, which part of you looks like a monk? Then what do I look like?" Emosher was too lazy to banter with him. "After a while, there should be a few foreign fighter mechas attacking our base. Do you have the ability to crack their program and take those mechas?" The small monk chuckled and scratched his bald head. He said, "Boss, I don't dare to say too much." After all, he didn't know much about the mecha programs of the Flaming Dawn continent. However, as long as you buy me some time, I have a 50% chance of cracking their firewall. Emosher nodded. "I'll try to buy you as much time as possible. Take over those mechas without damaging them." The small monk nodded and said, "Yes, boss." "I swear to Buddha that I will complete the mission." Emosher laughed. "Do you think Buddha will care about you?" The small monk chuckled and said, "If Buddha doesn't care about me, I won't believe in Buddha anymore." Emosher asked back, "Have you ever believed in Buddha?" The small monk scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. "I've never believed in Buddha. But I believe in boss. Believe in boss and you will live forever." After sending the small monk away, Emosher continued to check Erden's memories. As a newcomer, every time Emosher plundered a person's memories, he would directly check all of them. From there he would gain more knowledge. Anyway, his dragon will had now advanced to level 4. Checking the complete memories wouldn't affect him too much. After a while, Emosher made a major discovery in Erden's memories. There was an ancient battlefield on the Flaming Dawn continent. This wasn't an ordinary ancient battlefield, but an ancient battlefield of giant dragons. Legend had it that in ancient times, 2 groups of giant dragons fought there, which eventually formed the ancient battlefield of giant dragons. When Emosher saw this, he couldn't help but feel excited. If he went to the ancient battlefield of giant dragons and signed in there, the benefits should be much greater than the dragon ruins. There were many good things in the ancient battlefield of giant dragons. Not to mention other things, just picking up a piece of dragon scale and making it into a shield would be harder than any shield in the world. Moreover, there were many powerful wild beasts in the ancient battlefield of giant dragons. Therefore, it was also a good place to go for training. However, those who had been there and whose strength was below that of a desolate hunter would often die inexplicably. Even if they didn't die, some strange things would often happen to them. Therefore, the ancient battlefield was sealed by a powerful being. Of course, they didn't completely seal it off. Those who had reached the level of a desolate hunter could still break the seal and go to the ancient battlefield of giant dragons. Therefore, many top experts who had reached the level of a desolate hunter would go to the ancient battlefield of giant dragons to train if they couldn't improve for a long time. After they came back from there, their strength would often increase. Many people would increase by 2 or even 3 levels at once. After becoming a desolate hunter, the difficulty of increasing one's strength increased exponentially. Those who went to the ancient battlefield of giant dragons, no matter their aptitude, would increase by 2 or 3 levels. It could be seen that the ancient battlefield of giant dragons was definitely a treasure trove. The more Emosher thought about it, the more excited he became. He couldn't wait to go to the ancient battlefield of giant dragons. However, after a while he suppressed the excitement in his heart. It was better to increase his strength to that of a desolate hunter first. This was an extremely long process. Therefore, for the next few days, Emosher continued to sign in at the base every day. Every day he used 8 drops of dragon blood to transform his body. According to his estimation, it would take another 10 to 11 months before he could increase his strength again. At the same time, in addition to controlling the infected creatures to extract the pods, he would also go outside and hunt a large number of infected creatures. He had this idea: gather 100 billion evolution points as soon as possible and upgrade the system as soon as possible. After upgrading, there might be other ways to increase his strength faster. He would be able to hunt these infected creatures much faster. As long as the infected creatures were level 7 and below, he would be able to explode them into a bloody mist with a sweep of his dragon's will. Of course, his dragon's will was still in the recovery stage. Therefore, the range of his dragon's will had been greatly reduced, only about 10 kilometers in radius. But even so, Emosher was able to hunt down these infected creatures at an extremely fast speed. A single level 1 desolate beast gave him 100,000 evolution points. In a short 10 days his evolution points had reached more than 30 billion. He estimated that he would be able to reach 100 billion in a month. At the same time, on the continent more than 3,000 kilometers away from the first hunting island, the leader of the Black Tua gang was burning with anxiety. Chapter 248. The center of the Flaming Land was a large continent. There were more than 20 large hunting islands around it. There was a hunting ground on each hunting island. The closest hunting island to the first hunting island was more than 3,000 kilometers away. In the Great Sun County of Yuzhou, there was a gang called the Black Pack Gang. This gang was a first-rate faction in the Great Sun County. It had 50,000 members. The gang leader, Uru, had reached level 9. Most importantly, they had 2 mechas on the surface. In fact, they had 6 mechas in secret. However, the first-rate faction in the Great Sun County could only be considered a third-rate faction in the entire Yuzhou. Uru had always thought that the Black Pack Gang couldn't grow because they didn't have their own mines. Therefore, a few days ago, when the vice leader of the Sandstorm mercenary group came and said that he had found a mine, he immediately sent someone to investigate. And the person he sent was his own son. However, who would have thought that after more than 10 days, there was still no news of him? He tried to contact him countless times, but there was no reply. He then sent people to the Sandstorm mercenary group, but the entire Sandstorm mercenary group had disappeared. This caused him to panic a little. He could only send someone to the first hunting island to investigate. In the end, he found traces of human activity on the first hunting island. Therefore, on this day he decided to go to the first hunting island himself. And he brought a cheetah mecha. On this day Emosher was killing wild beasts. However, at this moment, about 1,000 people were flying to the first hunting island on hover skates. Behind them, there were 6 flying mechas flying towards them at high speed. Emosher had already discovered these people through the virtual watchtowers around the island. When he saw the 6 flying mechas, Emosher couldn't help but feel happy. Flying mechas were more advanced than ordinary mechas. He didn't expect the people of the Flaming Land to be so hospitable. Seeing that he was new here and lacked mechas, they took the initiative to send them over. Since that was the case, there was no reason not to accept. Thinking of this, Emosher quickly called the little monk over. The little monk's hand was still on the game console. He didn't even raise his head and asked, "Boss, you called me?" Emosher said, "What's the point of playing games all the time? There are a few flying mechas out there. Think of a way to get them for me." Hearing this, the little monk's eyes lit up. It was as shiny as his bald head. He had long since gotten bored of the mechas on Hunting Island 1. Now that he had a flying mech to play with, he was naturally excited. "All right, boss. Just do your best to buy me some time." Emosher nodded. "Just do your own thing and don't worry about anything else." The small monk nodded. Then he tapped the keyboard on his waist twice and activated it. Then his fingers flew quickly on the keyboard. As if he was chanting scriptures, he kept muttering, "Amit Ba, that's good." Attempting to establish a remote connection. Remote connection successful. Analyzing firewall code. Beginning to implant cracking program. At the same time, the leader of the Black Pack gang arrived in the air above the base with over 1,000 people. They saw that in the center of the first hunting island, which was originally blood red, there was a large green space. They couldn't help but be surprised that there were still humans and mechs moving around on this patch of green. Ulu said to the keyboard player behind him, "Release the drones for reconnaissance." The keyboard player replied, "Yes, boss." With that, he released more than 500 drones. However, just as these 500 drones took off, whoosh 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 whoosh, more than 500 blue light beams suddenly shot out from the mountaintop in the distance without warning. They accurately hit these drones. Boom 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 boom. All the drones instantly emitted sparks. They fell from the sky. The keyboard player was stunned. On the other hand, Ulu's expression turned extremely ugly. One had to know that all his drones were equipped with energy shields. They could resist telekinesis, physical and energy attacks. People below the level of a desolate hunter couldn't cause any harm to them at all. Obviously, those blue light beams that had just shot out should be some kind of high-tech weapon. He didn't expect that this island, which was occupied by infected creatures everywhere, would have high-tech weapons that even he didn't know about. Of course, he didn't know that these drones of Emosher's were obtained from the system. They were completely ahead of the Flaming Lands drones. They had energy beams that could penetrate the energy shields of the Flaming Lands drones. At this time, Ulu was floating in the air with more than 1,000 people, and they became living targets for Emosher's drones. Of course, Ulu was not stupid. He quickly realized this and immediately ordered everyone, "Let's go. Land immediately, quick." Everyone was shocked and quickly followed Ulu to land on the ground. At the same time, Ulu said to the keyboard player, "Order the mechas to land now." The keyboard player hurriedly operated for a while. In the sky, the 6 mechas landed on the ground. The mechas clicked and quickly transformed into the cheetah mecha. Many people in the Flaming Land were in love with the cheetah mecha. It was fast, had outstanding combat ability, and could adapt to various terrains on the battlefield. "Let the cheetah mecha scout ahead," Ulu ordered. The keyboard player replied, "Yes." He immediately controlled the 6 mechas and drilled into the blood-red forest ahead. At the same time, the upper left of the screen showed the images taken by the 6 mechas. It was also at this time that a figure suddenly appeared in the sky without warning. "You trespassed on Hunting Island 1 with mechas. This is not very friendly." Everyone heard this and looked up. In the sky, a young man who looked to be in his 20s was floating there. He was dressed in black. Behind him was a pair of blood-red wings that were more than 6 meters wide. The strange thing was that these blood-red wings were not solid, but condensed from energy. One had to know that on the Flaming Land, the only way hunters could use energy was to release it through energy weapons. Only after becoming a hunter could they condense energy into various weapons or wings. Could it be that this guy was a hunter? However, he quickly came to his senses. Judging from the energy fluctuations on this guy, he was probably only a level 2 hunter. The reason why he could condense energy into wings should be because he used some special skill. Thinking of this, he asked coldly, "Where is my son, Erden?" Seeing that this guy's tone was so stiff, Emosher did not give him face. He directly said 2 words, "Killed." What? Ulu's expression suddenly became extremely ugly. His son was dead. Although he had already guessed that his son might be dead, guessing and actually having it confirmed were 2 completely different concepts. Now that he heard it from a stranger, how could he, as a father, remain calm? Chapter 249. Wu Lu, the leader of the Black Tua gang, had heard that Emosher had killed his son. Moreover, he said it in such a casual tone as if he had just slapped an ant to death. This made Wu Lu's heart surge with anger. As a father, after learning that his son had been killed by this guy in front of him, that kind of hatred and anger could not be imagined by those who had not experienced it personally. However, Wu Lu was the leader of a first-rate force in the Great Sun County. Naturally, he was not brainless. He did not immediately step forward. Instead, he said to a level 6 psychic master beside him, "Kill him. Tear him to shreds." The level 6 psychic master also knew how angry the leader was. He did not say much. With a thought, he directly enveloped Emosure. However, at this moment he suddenly felt an enormous wave of psychic power pressing down on his body. If he continued to tear apart the guy in the air without caring, then his own body was likely to be torn apart. Therefore he quickly withdrew his psychic power and protected his body. In the past, even if he used psychic power to protect his body, he would be easily torn apart by Emosure's psychic power. But today, Emosure's dragon will had only recovered by 10%. Secondly, Emosure wanted to stall for time. So Emosure was just scaring him. This level 6 psychic master did not dare to release his psychic power outside his body. Seeing that the kid did not move at all, Wu Lu suddenly turned his head. His eyes were bloodshot because of anger, and he glared fiercely at the level 6 psychic master. The level 6 psychic master quickly explained, "Leader, that kid is also a psychic master, and it is very likely that his psychic power level is on par with mine." Hearing this, Wu Lu snorted coldly. No wonder he is so arrogant. Then he said to a level 8 hunter beside him, "Shoot him down." The level 8 hunter naturally knew what the leader meant. He immediately pulled down the sleeve of his right arm. The mechanical arm inside was revealed. Soon, the mechanical arm was wrapped in a layer of cuticle. The cuticle quickly turned into a red-white energy weapon. Whoosh! A red and white energy beam instantly shot out from his energy weapon towards Emosure. However, just as this energy beam was about to hit Emosure, Emosure suddenly stopped. An energy barrier suddenly appeared in front of Emosure. In fact, it should be called an energy barrier. Not only did it cover Emosure, but it also covered Emosure and the entire base behind him. This energy shield was made up of countless hexagons the size of houses. When the energy beam hit the energy barrier was shattered. There was no reaction from the energy shield at all. As for Emosure, who was within the light barrier, he was safe and sound. Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. "Leader, they have a defensive barrier. Such a large defensive area, this is King abnormal." It should be known that most defensive light shields were basically used to protect mechas or at most, a house. Here, on the other hand, the defensive light barrier covered a radius of 50 kilometers. How many crystal sources did it take to support such a large consumption? It seemed that it was true that there was a vein of crystal sources on Hunting Island 1. At this moment, whoosh, a black shadow suddenly shot out from behind Emosure. Its speed was extremely fast, like a black lightning bolt. Poof! It instantly pierced through the chest of the hunter who had attacked Emosure, and it directly nailed him to the ground. When the Black Tua gang members saw this, they were all shocked. One hit to kill a level 8 hunter. That meant that the opponent had at least a level 9 hunter. It was not only the gang members who were shocked. Even the leader of the Black Tua gang felt his heart skip a beat. Originally, if this kid was only a level 8 psychic master, he would have been able to kill him with his own strength. But now that the opponent had a level 9 hunter, it was somewhat troublesome. Fortunately, he had brought 6 mechas today. Thinking of this, he ordered the keyboard player next to him, "Find that level 9 hunter first and kill him for me." The keyboard player replied, "Yes. Yes." His fingers quickly danced on the virtual keyboard. But soon he realized that something was wrong. Because he was too surprised, he could not help but make a sound. Someone next to him asked, "What's wrong?" The keyboard player stared at the screen. He saw that there were 6 mechas on the screen. Originally, these 6 mechas were all green. But now one of the mechas had turned red. "Lost contact?" the person asked. The keyboard player's face was very ugly as he nodded. Hearing this, Ulu also looked at the virtual screen. Then he shouted fiercely, "Forget about the mecha. Ignore that mecha for now. Get the other mecha to come over and take that brat down." "Yes," the keyboard player hurriedly said. Soon he controlled the remaining 5 mechas and rushed back here. However, after only a minute, his 2 fingers suddenly stopped moving. His face was even uglier than before, because the virtual screen showed that another mecha had lost contact. But at this time he did not dare to report this news to the leader. The leader had just learned of his son's death, and then he had suffered a series of setbacks. If he continued to report bad news at this time with the leader's temper, there was a high possibility that he would be killed on the spot in a rage. So the keyboard player's hands only paused for a moment before he continued to operate again. But after another minute, another mecha had lost contact. The keyboard player's forehead was already covered in fine beads of sweat. Fortunately, at this time the remaining 3 mechas had all returned. He quickly controlled the 3 mechas and raised their heads. Ulu, who was next to him, saw that only 3 mechas had returned. He already understood what had happened. He glanced at the screen. Sure enough, the patterns of 3 mechas had turned red. But at this time he did not have time to care about this. His bloodshot eyes stared fiercely at Emosure in the sky. Fire for me. He almost gnashed his teeth as he shouted. His voice was shocking, full of the grief and hatred in the heart of a father who had just lost his son. Even the gang members behind him, whose hearts were as hard as iron, were shocked when they heard their leaders roar. One by one they could not help but be moved. However, after Ulu shouted that sentence, the 3 mechas didn't respond at all. Ulu was stunned. He suddenly turned his head and stared at the screen. On the screen the images of the 6 mechas had all turned red. At the same time 4 words were displayed on the screen: lost contact. Chapter 250. The keyboard player followed Ulu's orders and wanted to attack. But he suddenly found that all 6 mechas had lost connection. The 3 mechas in front of him were clearly standing there with their heads raised, staring at Emosure in the sky. But they were motionless. No matter how he operated them, the 3 mechas were like stone sculptures. Ulu also noticed that something was wrong at this moment. He glanced at the virtual screen and immediately became furious. Get the mechas back now? The flames of fury in his eyes were about to burst out. The keyboard player was suddenly frightened. His clothes were soaked in sweat in a short time. He nodded repeatedly. Yes, yes. His fingers danced quickly on the keyboard. At the same time, Little Monk's report came in Emosure's mind. Boss, it's done. Emosure was secretly amazed. This little monk really had some skills. Not only did he control the spider drones, but he also destroyed all the drones of the other party. And at the same time he also cracked all 6 of the other party's mechas. If there was a genius in the world, it had to be this kid. After all, he had only been exposed to the computers of the Flaming Land for less than half a year, and he could play with them to such an extent. Even the keyboard player of the other party was helpless. Thinking of this, Emosure ordered Little Monk in his mind. Test the combat power of their mechas. Little Monk's voice quickly came. Listen to you, boss. At the same time, the keyboard player of the Wuxia gang, after a period of nervous operation, their 3 mechas finally made their move. Not only did these 3 mechas move, but the other 3 lost mechas also rushed back. When the others around saw this, they were all delighted. This keyboard player was really capable. He solved the problem in such a short time. However, no one knew how frightened the keyboard player was at this moment. The lost mechas had indeed returned, and the 3 mechas in front of him had indeed moved. However, it was not under his control at all. It seemed that another person was controlling these 6 mechas. In other words, in just a few minutes, that person had cracked the firewall program of these 6 mechas and taken control of these 6 mechas. What kind of heaven-defying genius was this? Ulu did not know this. Like everyone else, he thought that the keyboard player had solved the problem. He immediately pointed at Emosure in the sky and roared at the keyboard player. Kill him. When the keyboard player heard this, his legs immediately went soft. Gang leader, Ulu had been impatient for a long time. I told you to kill him, so do it immediately. Why are you spouting so much nonsense? No, gang leader, these 6 mechas are not controlled by me. When everyone heard this, they quickly reacted. In the next moment, everyone was terrified. If he wasn't the one controlling it, then it must be someone else. It was important to note that the combat power of each mech was equivalent to that of a level 1 Desolate Hunter. And now, these 6 Desolate Hunters were being controlled by someone else. All of them were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Thinking of this, everyone had no time to think and hurriedly fled in all directions in fear. The next moment, whoosh 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 whoosh, above the 6 cheetah mechas, fiery red energy beams are constantly shooting out. These energy pillars were like sharp swords. They pierced into these people's bodies and cut off their heads. There was a sudden scream at the scene. Ah, my hand. No, I don't want to die. Whether it was the desolate hunters or the psychic masters, in front of these 6 mechas, they were simply a group of ants. Their energy weapons and psychic power could not destroy the energy shields of these 6 mechas. However, the energy beams fired out by the 6 mechs could easily sever their bodies. There were even 2 mechas that did not use energy to attack. Instead, they directly pounced. Roar. With a mechanical roar, it pounced on a level 7 desolate hunter. Its sharp claws pierced directly into the desolate hunter's chest. It pulled violently. Rip. It actually tore the level 7 desolate hunter in half. It pounced again and pushed another level 7 psychic master to the ground. It opened its mouth. Crack. It actually bit off the level 7 psychic master's head. When embark saw this, he naturally understood that this was the little monk's intention. This little monk killing in the game was not enough to satisfy him. He actually let these mechas use such a bloody method to directly kill these people. He did not look like a monk at all. Of course, embark had no objection to this. As the island owner of the #1 hunting island, did these people greet him when they came to the #1 hunting island? For those who dared to invade the #1 hunting island, they should be more ruthless. This was a massacre. Those so-called desolate hunters and psychic masters had no power to fight back in front of these mechas. Not only did they not have the power to fight back, but their speed was also much slower than these mechas. They could not escape even if they wanted to. In just half a minute, hundreds of people had been slaughtered. Wu Lu, the leader of the Wuxia gang, saw this and was greatly shocked. In the past, when he brought these 6 mechas to slaughter other forces, he only felt very happy and carefree. But today it was his turn to be slaughtered. Only now did he know that this was the feeling of being a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. It seemed that even he, a level 9 desolate hunter, was about to be slaughtered. He quickly took out something that looked like a lipstick stick. He pressed it gently. In the next moment, his body turned into a bluish-white ball of light. In less than half a second, the bluish-white ball of light had disappeared. At the same time, Little Monk's voice sounded in embark's mind. "I'm sorry, boss." Their boss escaped. Damn it. The corners of embark's mouth curled into a faint arc. He said, "It's okay." He naturally knew that the Wuxia gang leader had used the wormhole teleportation technique. It could teleport his body to another place in a short time. However, embark had already spent 10 billion evolution points to sign out a strain of Virus Zero and implanted it into his body. As early as when embark knew they were coming, he had already thought of this move. He knew that if the flaming continent remained peaceful, there would be frequent visitors to the #1 hunting island. After all, if the entire #1 hunting island was infected, it would be very conspicuous on the entire continent. Moreover, although not many people knew about the crystal source vein under the #1 hunting island, it was still not a small number. If he wanted to stop these people from coming, he had to create more chaos. He had to attract the attention of those people. As long as the world was in chaos, no one would pay attention to the #1 hunting island. Then embark could use this time to develop quickly. When they sorted out the chaos and returned their attention to the #1 hunting island, they would be surprised to find that the #1 hunting island had already become an existence that they could only look up to. Chapter 251. Hunting Island #1 at the edge of the Scarlet Forest. 6 cheetah mechas were slaughtering more than 1,000 people. Blood flowed like a river and broken limbs flew everywhere. embark looked at the 6 cheetah mechas with neither sadness nor joy on his face. There was nothing to be happy about getting these 6 cheetah mechas. After all, his goal was an army of mechas. 6 cheetah mechas were nothing. On the contrary, the 6 cheetah mechas he obtained today made him fall into deep thought. These 6 mechas originally belonged to the Black Pack gang. Now that the monk had cracked the firewall, they were slaughtering the Black Pack gang members. Then, one day if he had a mecha army he would be able to do so. If the firewall was cracked by others, this mecha army would turn on him and even massacre the entire base. Then wouldn't he have no power to fight back at all? Gradually the screams became fewer and fewer. The number of people still standing on the ground became fewer and fewer. When the last person was slaughtered, embark said to the monk in his mind, "If there's a chance, make an anti-cracking program." The little monk's voice sounded, "Okay boss, I thought about it just now. With an anti-cracking program, it's impossible for them to take our mechas over." embark shook his head and said, "What I mean is, let them take the mechas over." The little monk reacted quickly, "Boss, you mean to let them think that they have cracked our firewall and take the mechas over? In fact, they haven't cracked it at all. After they take it over, I'll control it again and the mechas will be able to kill them over there? Emosher nodded, yes. The little monk chuckled, hee hee, not bad boss, you're so cunning. I admire you. Emosher added, that's right. Also, add a self-destruct program. If we really can't control it anymore, these mechas will self-destruct. The little monk said, boss, you're so thoughtful. Don't worry, I'll make it for you within a month. After talking about business, the little monk sighed again, boss, it was really fun killing just now. Next time, if there's such an opportunity, you must bring me along. Emosher laughed, you really don't look like a monk. The little monk chuckled and said, I'm just helping them transcend. I'm doing good deeds and accumulating merit. Ba. Next, Emosher continued to look through the memories of the gang leader of the Black Pack gang. From his memories, he learned a lot of useful information. At the same time, Emosher once again checked the information about the ancient dragon battlefield. Moreover, Wu Lu clearly knew more about the ancient dragon battlefield than his son did. He even knew which province the ancient dragon battlefield was located in. This made Emosher's heart burn with passion once again. At the same time, in Dari prefecture of Yuzhou province. This was one of the more remote prefectures on the Flaming Dawn continent. In the entire county, the largest faction was the Black Pack Gang. In the courtyard of the Black Pack Gang's headquarters, a ball of light suddenly appeared without warning. Then, the blue and white light condensed into the silhouette of a human. It was none other than Wu Lu, the leader of the Black Pack Gang. After Wu Lu appeared, he was still in a state of shock. He strode into the main hall. His wife heard the footsteps and hurriedly came up to him. Gang leader, where's our son? Did you find him? But after saying this, she found that something was wrong. She saw that the gang leader's eyes were still bloodshot. His hair was messy and there was even a trace of shock on his face. She hurriedly asked with concern, gang leader, what happened? Ulu's expression was ugly. But he couldn't directly tell this woman the news of his son's death. He only said, we're in trouble. The 1,000 people I brought are all dead, and the 6 mechas were all taken. Ah. The woman was shocked and hurriedly asked, how did this happen? Gang leader Ulu slammed his fist on the stone table. Crash. The stone table instantly shattered into pieces. He gritted his teeth and said, where there's life, there's hope. One day I'll kill my way to the first hunting island. I'll kill that kid. The woman knew that she couldn't say anything else. She agreed and said, as long as you're fine, we can regroup and buy a few more mechas. Or, we can also join forces with the other forces in the other counties and kill our way to the first hunting island. Raise that place to the ground. Avenge our 1,000 brothers. These words were exactly what Wu Lu wanted to hear. He immediately ordered, men, prepare the gifts. I'll go find the other forces now. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. His expression changed drastically, and his entire body froze on the spot. Seeing this, the woman's beautiful face also turned pale. She asked in shock, gang leader, what's wrong? The gang leader didn't have time to pay attention to her at this time. He only felt that something seemed to be expanding rapidly in his body. He didn't have time to say anything, let alone do anything. The next moment, bang, within his body, a blood-red shockwave quickly spread out. It instantly rushed out of his body and spread to the entire main hall, and then to the entire Black Tua gang. This shockwave seemed to have no impact. It rushed to people and even to the flowers and plants, but the flowers and plants didn't even shake. However, whether it was people, flowers, plants, or trees after being affected by the shockwave, they quickly changed. The woman and the gang members of Black Tua gang quickly had greenish-black veins on their skin. Their eyes also turned grayish-white. However, unlike the zombies on Earth, their grayish-white eyes were more bloodshot. They looked more terrifying than the zombies on Earth. Each of them had become evolved zombies. The flowers and plants in the courtyard quickly became tall and big. At the same time, they also turned scarlet. Thick sanguisurincus began to hang down from the trees outside the courtyard. These sanguisurincus seemed to be alive like blood snakes, constantly twisting. It looked even more strange and terrifying. At the same time, the blood-red shock wave continued to spread outwards. 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, 50 kilometers. It didn't stop until it spread out to a radius of 100 kilometers. Within this range of 100 kilometers, all creatures became infected. And all of the infected creatures had a trace of Emosher's dragon will in their bodies. Emosher could easily know the situation within the range of the virus zero infection. After discovering this, A smile appeared on Emosher's face. He knew that in the next period of time, the infected animals within the infection range would continue to move around. The entire infection range would continue to expand. And the news of the infection here would quickly spread throughout Yuzhou. At that time, the infection of Great Sun County would attract a lot of attention. As for his hunting island number 1, he would be able to develop in silence. Chapter 252. Emosher used the strand of dragon intent he had left on Ulu to investigate the situation in the Great Sun County. He was temporarily relieved. His next short-term goal was to quickly collect evolution points and upgrade the system. Only by upgrading the system could he increase his strength quickly. Then he could quickly become a desolate hunter and go to the ancient dragon battlefield. Thus, Emosher crazily killed desolate beasts on the first hunting island. With his strength, killing hundreds of desolate beasts every hour was not a problem. That was tens of millions of evolution points. In a day he would earn 300 to 500 million evolution points. Adding on the clones on Earth, the level 10 psychokinesis, and the sea dragon clone. He could earn 300 to 500 million evolution points every day. Emosher earned 7 to 1 billion evolution points every day. Even so, he felt that it was still a bit slow. Fortunately, after a few days, his telekinesis had slowly recovered to a radius of 100 kilometers. The speed of killing infected creatures had greatly increased. He would earn more than 2 billion evolution points every day. At the same time in the Great Sun County of Yuzhou. The princess's manor. The princess looked at the messages on the screen and felt a headache. Estimated death toll is more than 2 million. With the Black Tua gang as the center, everything within a radius of 130 kilometers has been infected and turned blood red. The infection range is still expanding. According to experts, if it is not controlled, the infection range will reach 300 kilometers within a month. It was not the first time a virus had leaked on the Flaming Continent. The Flaming Continent had more than 20 hunting islands and more than 20 hunting grounds. The owners of these hunting grounds were responsible for releasing all kinds of viruses into the hunting grounds and giving birth to powerful infected creatures. The desolate hunters could go to these hunting grounds to gain experience. Thus, if they were not careful, the virus would leak. However, since they could release these viruses, they naturally had a lot of research on them. They were very clear on how these viruses spread and their weaknesses. Thus, even if there was a virus leak, they could control it in a very short time. However, the virus that leaked this time was a new type of virus. The princess sent out several groups of experts to study this new type of virus. In the end, they found that with their current methods they could not kill this virus. Even the disinfectant known as 10,000 poison extermination was useless. This was the main reason why the princess was having a headache. 2 strategists stood behind the princess. Princess, we should report this to the governor as soon as possible. Otherwise, if things get out of hand, we won't be able to bear the consequences. A long-bearded strategist said. The princess remained silent. Another strategist with a fair complexion shook his head. I don't think it's appropriate. If the governor knew that our princess was unable to resolve this matter, wouldn't he doubt our princess's ability? And if we can't solve it, we'll report it to the governor. It's like throwing a big problem to the governor. Will the governor be happy? If the governor is unhappy, none of us will have a good time. The long-bearded tactician stared at the fair-skinned tactician and said angrily, human lives are at stake. How can we abandon the lives of the common people for the sake of a black veil on our heads? The fair-skinned strategist sneered. Even if it's a matter of life and death, you can't throw the trouble to the leaders. Our mission is to help the leaders solve their problems. The long-bearded tactician was also angry. His voice rose an octave. Then what do you think we should do? The fair-skinned tactician looked coldly at the long-bearded tactician. It's simple. Just 2 words. The princess's eyes flashed as she looked at the fair-skinned strategist. The fair-skinned strategist said slowly, nuclear flattening. The long-bearded strategist shook his head. I knew you wouldn't say anything good. Have you forgotten what the Continental Nuclear Weapons Convention says? If people know that we used nuclear weapons without permission, I'm afraid. The fair-skinned strategist interrupted the long-bearded strategist. How big is the continent? Our Great Sun County is just a small place. We'll clear the area first and then detonate the nuclear bombs. Who will know? Plus, how many nuclear bombs are detonated every year on the continent? Have you done a count? 300. Do you think no one will know if more than 300 nuclear bombs are detonated? We're all adults. There are a lot of things that people just turn a blind eye to. Don't take it too seriously. The long-bearded strategist shook his head. If everyone thinks the same way as you do, the Flaming Dawn continent will be finished in less than 500 years. The fair-skinned strategist was amused and laughed. We hunters can live up to 200 years old at most. We don't care about what happens 500 years later. Maybe we'll find another habitable planet in 500 years and migrate. The long-bearded strategist wanted to say something, but the princess spoke first. Then, let's just do it. The long-bearded strategist paused, then shook his head and sighed. Sigh. This was the current situation of the Flaming Origin continent. He couldn't do anything by himself. Therefore, they used 3 days to move the people around the infected area to a place far away from the infected area. They also used drones to check the infected area to make sure that there were no humans around. Then they dropped a nuclear bomb on the infected area. Flames shot up into the sky, and a huge mushroom cloud rose. The shockwave destroyed all the buildings within a radius of more than 100 kilometers in a very short time. Not even a blade of grass grew on the ground. However, 3 hours after the explosion, when they sent the drone to investigate again, they found nothing. They were shocked to find that the infected creatures that had been destroyed by the nuclear explosion were quickly recovering. This new virus had a strong self-healing ability. Not only could the nuclear bomb not kill them, even the cells that were killed by the radiation of the nuclear explosion could be quickly repaired. This discovery caused a wave of panic in the princess's heart. The strategist's already pale face turned even paler. There was almost nothing in the Flaming Origin continent that couldn't be killed by nuclear bombs. And now this virus wasn't afraid of nuclear bombs at all. Not being afraid of nuclear bombs meant that it wasn't afraid of anything. Didn't that mean that if protective measures weren't taken as soon as possible and this virus was allowed to spread, the entire Flaming Origin continent would be doomed? Finally, the strategist said to the princess, "Princess, I'm afraid this virus is not simple. We have to report to the governor." The princess's expression was extremely serious as she nodded. She only said one word, "Okay." Soon, the governor learned about what happened in the Great Sun County. His first reaction was to do the same. But when he learned that the virus wasn't even afraid of nuclear bombs, he panicked. He quickly organized manpower and physical resources to build a quarantine zone around the infected area. At the very least, the virus couldn't be allowed to continue spreading. The incident in the infected area of the Great Sun County attracted the attention of almost everyone in Yuzhou. The few forces who knew that there was a crystal source vein on Hunting Island No. 1 had temporarily given up on the idea of going to Hunting Island No. 1. They felt that it was better to wait for a while. It would be safer to go out after the new virus was eliminated. Chapter 253. Those forces all set their sights on the Great Sun County. This gave Emosher a chance to develop. He continued to sign in every day, and at the same time he continued to kill those infected creatures. Hunting Island No. 1 was extremely large. Its area was probably similar to the area of China on Earth. On such a large area, the number of desolate beasts was in the tens of billions. After nearly 2 months of killing, Emosher's evolution points had gradually approached 100 billion. Finally, on this day when his dragon will swept across again, all the desolate beasts within a radius of 150 kilometers exploded into a bloody mist. A notification sounded in his mind. Frowny face. The total number of evolution points has reached 100 billion points. The system can be upgraded. Do you want to upgrade immediately? Emosher was overjoyed. He was finally going to upgrade. However, he didn't upgrade immediately. Instead, he took a few steps and jumped back into the base. He hadn't signed in yet today. Soon after signing in, he said in his mind, "Upgrade now." The system's voice quickly sounded. Frowny face. This upgrade will consume 100 billion evolution points. Do you want to confirm the upgrade? Of course, quickly upgrade. Emosher couldn't wait to rub his hands. He felt that his palms were sweating. Although it wasn't the first time he upgraded. However, because he had waited for too long this time, and because his strength had been increasing very slowly recently, he hoped that after the system upgraded, his strength would increase faster. Therefore, he was full of expectations for this upgrade. This upgrade will take 24 hours. During the upgrade you cannot sign in. The system's voice sounded again. Emosher was slightly stunned. In the past, it only took 12 hours to upgrade, but this time it actually took 24 hours? Whatever, I'll upgrade first. For the next day, Emosher stayed in the base obediently and didn't go anywhere. Although it was only 24 hours, only one day. However, because he was too expectant, Emosure felt that each day was like a year. It seemed that waiting quietly wasn't a solution. Something had to happen to make time pass faster. Fortunately, something happened in the afternoon. Emma brought her son into Emosure's office. "Master, my strength has increased." Hearing this, Emosure opened the blood dragon's eye and looked at Emma. Species, blood clan, level 1 vampire, level 1 psychic. Emosure's heart was filled with joy. Level 1 evolved vampire was equivalent to a level 1 hunter. Emma was the first person to reach the level of a scavenger other than himself. If the base wanted to develop, the scavenger hunters were indispensable. Don't forget that Emma is also a psychic master. This allowed her to crush level 2 scavenger. He could even challenge a level 3 hunter by 2 levels. Thinking of this, Emosure had an idea. Emma had become a level 10 super mutant blood breed after absorbing Dracula's blood. Then he stayed in the base for a few months and reached level 1 to evolve into a vampire. In that case, he could sign in and get some Dracula's blood from the system. For others to absorb. Turning them all into level 10 super mutant blood breeds. With the help of the Dragon Palace, these level 10 super mutant blood breeds could become level 1 evolved blood breeds within a few months. In fact, he had thought of this when he first came to the Flaming Dawn continent. However, at that time he had to sign in at various places to increase the equipment of the base. He also had to constantly sign in to increase his strength. Therefore he could only put this idea aside for now. Now that the system was about to be upgraded, perhaps after the upgrade, the speed of his strength increase would be greatly accelerated. Then he would be able to free up some sign-in opportunities, sign in Dracula's blood, and create level 10 super mutant blood breeds. Emosure carefully sized up Emma, who had just leveled up. He saw that her figure seemed to be getting better. She was fat where she should be fat and thin where she should be thin. There was not a trace of extra fat. She did not look dry. Moreover, her every movement exuded the charm of a mature woman. Even someone as determined as Emosure couldn't help but feel a little emotional. She was simply a natural beauty. Emosure said, "After being promoted to level 1 evolved blood breed, your level is equivalent to a level 1 scavenger and a level 1 wild beast. If you want to increase your strength faster, you can go outside the base to gain experience." Emma nodded. "Yes, master." Then she walked out with her son, who had a dull look in his eyes. Emosure thought for a moment and said, "You can leave your son in the base and let Happy take care of him. This way it will be more convenient for you to gain experience." A hint of panic flashed in Emma's eyes. As Emosure's servant, who had been transformed by Emosure with Dracula's blood, she should have been 100% obedient to any of Emosure's orders. But only when it came to her son did she feel a little reluctant to part with him. She pleaded, "Master, please let me take care of my son. Without him by my side I feel uneasy. I know that I disobeyed your orders and you can punish me however you want. I just beg you to let me take care of my son." Emosure smiled and comforted her. "This is not an order, just a suggestion. Since being separated from your son will distract you, then you should take him with you." The panic in Emma's eyes immediately turned into gratitude. "Thank you, master. Thank you, master." After Emma left, Happy walked in. She looked at the backs of the mother and son with pity in her eyes. She gestured to Emosure. "Brother Emo, do you have a way to restore her son's intelligence? They are so pitiful." Emosure shook his head and said, "I don't have a solution yet. Maybe there will be one in the future." Happy nodded and gestured. "Thank you, Brother Emo." Emosure shook his head and said with a smile, "What are you thanking me for? I was planning to restore her son's intelligence when I could do it in the future." That night, the moonlight gently leaped in through the bedroom window and caressed Happy's cheeks. Emosure looked at Happy's side profile that was outlined by the moonlight and listened to her even breathing. A feeling called happiness slowly spread in his heart. After being reborn, he was able to meet such a kind and considerate girl like Happy who could possess terrifying strength at critical moments. He was definitely lucky. But this analogy did not seem to be appropriate. He must have been lucky for 8 lifetimes. Therefore he had to increase his strength as soon as possible and give her a stable and warm home. It was late at night. Happy was already sound asleep. Emosure was thinking about the system's upgrade, but he could not fall asleep no matter what. He quietly put on his clothes and went to the monk's room. More than 10 days ago, the monk had already created the anti-hacking program for the mecha. At that moment he was working overtime, playing games. When he saw Emosure arrive, He quickly put out the cigarette in his hand and said the name of Buddha. Yo, Amitba. Boss, why are you here? It's the middle of the night. It's not very appropriate for you to suddenly come to my room and be seen by others. Emosher glared at him and said, Stop it. Cut the crap. Give me the game console. When he could not sleep at night, playing games was the best way to pass the time. Because as he played, he would realize that the more he played, the more energetic he became. The more he played, the more he could not sleep. Chapter 254. Emosher and the little monk played for an entire night. Speaking of which, the games in the Flaming Origin continent were indeed much more fun than those on Earth. The game's graphics were extremely realistic. Even the pores on a person's body and the texture of leaves could be seen clearly. Moreover, the game's plot and other aspects were definitely incomparable to those on Earth. After playing for an entire night, the little monk's eyes were already bloodshot. Although he was excited, his body was only equivalent to an ordinary person's body. Therefore he looked a little tired. On the other hand, Emosher looked very energetic. This was the difference between the physique of a hunter and an ordinary person. Emosher only left the little monk's room after 8 o'clock in the morning. The people in the factory saw Emosher come out of the little monk's room early in the morning. They were a little surprised. After Emosher returned to his room, some people whispered, What happened? Was Mr. Emo kicked out of his room by Happy? He's homeless and can only go to the monk's room? I don't think so. Maybe Mr. Emo took the initiative to go to the little monk's room. Happy, so love can really disappear? After Emosher returned to his room, Happy saw that Emosher had returned. Although she was puzzled about where Emosher went last night, she also knew that Emosher had a lot of secrets. Since he didn't want to say, she didn't ask. Instead, she took the initiative to prepare breakfast for Emosher. Emosher looked at Happy's busy back and felt warm in his heart. He said, I couldn't sleep last night, so I went to the little monk and played games for an entire night. Happy turned around with a smile on her face. Her smile was very contagious. It made people feel as if they were bathed in a spring breeze. After breakfast, Emosher wanted to lie on the bed and rest for a while. However, when he thought that the system's upgrade would be completed by noon, he couldn't help but be filled with anticipation. He still didn't feel sleepy. He could only lie on the bed and continue playing games. Speaking of which, this game called Ultimate Slaughter was getting more and more addictive the more he played it. He played until 12:25 noon. A notification suddenly sounded in his mind. System upgrade completed. When Emosher heard this, he was instantly overjoyed. He quickly put down the game console in his hand and checked it in his mind. Upgrade Reward 1. 100 drops of Dracula's blood. Upgrade Reward 2. Flying mechas 10 sets. Upgrade Reward 3. Wormhole transportation device 1. Emosher looked at the rewards and nodded repeatedly. System, you're like a worm in my stomach. I'll get whatever I want. Just as he was about to ask for the blood of Dracula and the combat mech, he was rewarded. The wormhole teleportation device was also something he coveted. After all, there were almost no restrictions on the Flaming Origin continent. When he encountered danger, all he had to do was press the button, and he would be instantly teleported to the designated location. It was definitely a life-saving artifact. Then the system notification sounded again. Content of this upgrade: reward for killing Titan Dragon Blood. Kill reward mechanism. Killing a creature equivalent to a level 1 dire beast will result in 1 drop of Titan Dragon Blood. Killing a creature equivalent to a level 2 dire beast will reward you with 2 drops of Titan Dragon Blood. And so on. When Emosher heard this notification, he suddenly felt his heart skip a beat. One had to know that he could only get 8 drops of Titan Dragon Blood every day. And now, he could get a drop of Titan Dragon Blood by killing a level 1 dire beast. If he could kill hundreds of dire beasts with a casual sweep of his dragon will, wouldn't that mean that he could get hundreds of drops of Titan Dragon Blood? This was a little King perverted. Thinking of this, he swept his dragon will. Within a radius of more than 100 kilometers, 10 dire beasts exploded into a bloody mist. Then, there was no then. Emosher quietly waited for the notification to sound, but there was no sound. He couldn't help but ask in his mind, System, where's the promised kill reward of Titan Dragon Blood? The system's voice quickly sounded frowny face reward for killing. No dragon will or energy. You can only kill with your physical strength. F***CK, why didn't you say so earlier? Emosher felt like he had been tricked. The system's voice sounded again. Frowny face. The giant dragon's strongest point is not its energy or technique. It's their physical strength and terrifying strength. To become a dragon, a heaven-defying physical strength is a must. The kill reward is to strengthen the host's body. Emo sure understood that this was the system's good intentions. He didn't say anything else. Great success. Dragon Shadow Step activated. He instantly left the base. When he reappeared, he was already 100 kilometers away. He probed with his dragon will and began to look for level 1 to 3 dire beasts. With his strength as a level 2 hunter, it was already his limit to deal with level 3 dire beasts without using dragon will and energy. But because the dire beasts here were all strengthened by the Zero virus, so most of the dire beasts were above level 5. It was really difficult to find one below level 5. After searching for half an hour, he finally found an uninfected level 2 dire beast at the edge of Hunting Island 1. This time, Emosher asked in advance, "System, can I use Titan Dragon Claw?" The system's voice replied. Frowny face. Yes. Emosher asked again, "The invisible force of the Dragon Claw?" The system's voice sounded. Frowny face. Using invisible force is ineffective. You will only be rewarded if you rely on your own body's strength. Okay. He directly formed Titan Dragon Claw. He leaped up and slashed at the level 2 dire beast. That level 2 dire beast also directly pounced at Emosher. Emosher slightly tilted his body and dodged its sharp teeth and claws. The Titan Dragon Claw ruthlessly slashed across the side of its body. It directly slashed across the side of its body, leaving a long and bloody wound. Fresh blood instantly spurted out. However, compared to the dire beast's huge body, which was more than 30 meters long, this wound didn't cause much damage. And at this moment, this level 2 dire beast was enraged when it was hurt. Its body made a series of cracking sounds and rapidly grew in size. In just over 10 seconds, it grew to more than 200 meters long. In this way, the damage caused by the Titan Dragon Claw was almost negligible without the use of invisible force. Emosher slightly frowned and asked the system, "Can I use genetic weapons?" The system replied. Frowny face. A real giant dragon disdains to use genetic weapons. *CK. Emosher cursed. He simply retracted his Titan Dragon Claw. Since he had to rely on his own strength, he might as well not use anything. He watched as the 200-meter-long level 2 dire beast pounced towards him once again. Emosher leaped up and instantly reached a height of 10,000 meters. Then he leaped up again and plunged headfirst into the ground at an extremely fast speed. His right hand was tightly clenched into a fist. Because he clenched it too tightly, his knuckles had turned white. Chapter 255. Emosher descended from the sky like a meteorite, smashing towards the 200-meter-long dire beast. His speed was extremely fast. The dire beast could not dodge at all. Boom. His fist smashed into the desolate beast's head. The tremendous impact caused the ground beneath the desolate beast's feet to sink down. Then its skull shattered with a cracking sound. It caved in. The dire beast's 200-meter-long body also crashed onto the ground. The ground within a radius of 500 meters had already cracked. A single punch from a human was enough to knock a 200-meter-long beast to the ground. This scene was extremely visually impactful. However, Emosher knew that dire beasts would not die so easily. With the dire beast's strength, as long as the muscles and cells in its abdomen that stored energy were not destroyed, the energy would allow its body to quickly recover. As expected, the dire beast's sunken head was recovering at an extremely fast speed. However, its head was still heavily injured. Before its head recovered, it would not be able to stand up and fight again. Emosher took advantage of this opportunity to move a kilometer away. Following which, using Dragon Shadow Steps, he instantly rushed to its abdomen from a kilometer away. Using the huge inertia, he punched towards its abdomen. One had to know that the abdomen of a dire beast was its Achilles heel. Therefore they were extremely protective of this place. Other than a thick layer of fat and muscle protection, there was also a layer of energy protection under the skin. Boom. Emosher's punch landed heavily on the dire beast's abdomen. The huge force caused the dire beast to slide over 100 meters on the ground. It created a 200-meter wide scar on the ground. However, because of the light shield protecting its abdomen, it did not cause any substantial damage to its abdomen. At this moment, the dire beast's head had completely recovered. It opened its mouth and a ray of energy attacked Emosher. However, Emosure had already leaped up and once again used dragon shadow steps to jump 10,000 meters into the air. At the place where Emosure was previously standing, a 200-meter wide crater appeared on the ground after being hit by that ray of energy. Emosure was once again smashed into the ground. The desolate beast had just spat out energy once, so it needed more than 10 seconds before it could spit out energy again. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Emosure smashed down once more. Crack. The desolate beast's head caved in once again. At the same time, Emosure arrived 10 kilometers away. Activating Dragon Shadow Step, he once again rushed to the abdomen of the desolate beast. He viciously smashed the desolate beast's abdomen. The desolate beast slid back 500 meters. Dozens of giant trees with a diameter of several meters were broken. However, its abdomen still did not suffer any substantial damage. However, when Emosure used his draconic will to investigate, he discovered that cracks had already appeared on the energy shield around its abdomen. He was overjoyed. With a leap, he dodged the second beam of energy from the desolate beast. For the third time, it leaped into the air and fell down, causing its skull to cave in. Once again he used Dragon Shadow Step and charged over from 10 kilometers away, smashing into its abdomen. Crack. This time there was finally the sound of glass shattering. The light shield around the big guy's abdomen directly shattered. The flesh on its abdomen was torn open. Emosure took the opportunity to quickly form Titan Dragon Claw and slashed at the thick fat on its abdomen. The desolate beast also realized the danger and hurriedly struggled to get up. However, it was already too late. The Titan Dragon Claw easily cut through the fat on its abdomen. A large amount of energy inside immediately flowed out. It kept dissipating in the air. And its head that was healing itself lost the support of energy and could no longer heal itself. After a moment, this 200-meter-long level 2 desolate beast finally stopped moving. The cells on its body began to die. Phew! Emosure let out a long breath. He was used to the assistance of draconic will and energy, so his battles had always been very easy. Now, without using draconic will and energy attacks, it was really not easy to fight with pure physical strength. If others knew what Emosure was thinking, they would probably vomit blood. Facing a desolate beast of the same level without using any energy attacks or telekinesis attacks, just relying on physical strength, he defeated this desolate beast in just 6 punches. It was completely a one-sided crushing. Was this not easy? If it were anyone else, they would not be able to do it at all. One had to know that the strongest aspect of a desolate beast was its physical strength. Now that you directly crushed a desolate beast of the same level with your physical strength, was this not easy? Of course, this was all because Emosure had taken countless drops of Titan Dragon blood and changed his physique. His physical strength, and other aspects were far superior to hunters of the same level. Otherwise, he would not be able to challenge a desolate beast of the same level with his bare hands. At this moment, the system's notification finally sounded in Emosure's mind. Killed 2 desolate beasts, obtained 2 drops of Titan Dragon blood. Emosure's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He checked his backpack and saw that there were indeed 2 small bottles there. He opened the bottles and absorbed the 2 drops of blood. Next, he continued to look for desolate beasts. Another half an hour later he found a level 1 desolate beast. Against a level 1 desolate beast, Emosure killed it with just 1 punch. The system's notification sounded in his mind again. Killed 1 level 1 desolate beast, obtained 1 drop of Titan Dragon blood. In the following day, Emosure killed more than 50 desolate beasts. Most of them were below level 2. He obtained as many as 83 drops of Titan Dragon blood. Including the 8 drops he received from signing in, he had a total of 92 drops. This was more than 10 times the amount he obtained in a day. After consuming all the blood, Emosure felt that the energy in his body was surging. Every muscle in his body was filled with strength. At this rate he would be able to level up again in at most a month. But Emosure was still not satisfied. It was not that he was not killing the desolate beasts fast enough. Most importantly, there were not that many level 1 and level 2 desolate beasts on the first hunting island. There were many level 5 desolate beasts, but with Emosure's current strength, he could not fight them alone with his bare hands. It seemed that he had to find a place with more level 1 and level 2 desolate beasts. The place with the most level 1 and level 2 desolate beasts was naturally the second hunting ground. On the planet where the second hunting ground was located, the highest level was a level 2 desolate beast. So if Emosure went there, not only would his life not be in danger, but he could also quickly kill the desolate beasts and obtain the Titan Dragon blood. As for the base, there were a total of 17 mechas guarding it, which was equivalent to 17 desolate hunters. In addition, the Dragon Palace could defend against any attack below the level of a desolate hunter. At the same time, it could kill any enemy below the level of a desolate hunter. So there was no need to worry. To go to any hunting ground, tickets were required. And the tickets were not cheap. To go to the second hunting island, a ticket cost 20,000. Chapter 256. A ticket to the second hunting ground cost 20,000. This was indeed a little expensive. However, one should not forget that Emosher had taken over the first hunting island. Naturally, he had taken over everything that had been on the island. That included Belki's cash and electronic currency. All of Belki's assets, including fixed assets, more than 100 million in electronic currency, and more than 2 million in cash. The electronic currency required facial recognition to be used. However, after more than 10 days of research, Little Monk had cracked the facial recognition program. He had replaced Belki's face with Emosher's. Therefore, Emosher was now a millionaire with 100 million and 2 million in cash. Of course, as the owner of the island, this amount of money was indeed a little embarrassing. However, there was nothing he could do about it. Belki had not managed his business well. He had squandered tens of billions of cash to this amount. However, with 100 million in cash, he was definitely an overlord on the mainland. Moreover, one should not forget that there was a crystal source vein under the first hunting island. It was worth a lot of money. Before going to the second hunting island, Emosher gathered everyone in the base. He said to these people, "I have a way to greatly increase your strength in a short period of time. You will be comparable to a level 10 great hunter." Everyone was overjoyed when they heard this. Among them, the strongest was only a level 2 great hunter. If he wanted to become a level 10 great hunter, it would take him at least 3 to 5 years to do so. As for the others, it was needless to say. Now that Mr. Mo could help them become level 10 great hunters in a short period of time, how could they not be excited? Of course, there were smart people among these people. They quickly raised a question. "Mr. Mo, there must be a condition to become a level 10 great hunter in a short period of time, right?" Emosher nodded and said, "Of course. There is only one condition to become a level 10 great hunter in a short period of time, and that is to become a blood kindred." Blood kindred. This. Hearing Emosher's words, everyone's heart shuddered. They were very excited when they heard that they could become level 10 great hunters in a short period of time. However, the price of this condition was too high. "Mr. Mo, after becoming a member of the Blood Clan, do you have to drink human blood continuously?" Emosher pointed at the curvaceous Emma. "This Emma has the most right to speak." Emma took a step forward. Every step she took revealed the fatal seduction of a mature woman. Although she did not deliberately seduce anyone, she was born with this kind of temperament. There was no other way. Many of the men below felt their throats dry up when they saw Emma. In the face of such a woman, there was no man who wouldn't be moved. Even if this woman was a vampire. Even the little monk's eyes lit up. However, those men quickly lowered their heads. She did not dare to look at Emma again. In their eyes, Emma was Mr. Mo's woman. Even though her relationship with Mr. Mo was not as close as Happy's relationship with Mr. Mo. However, any man would be tempted by such a woman who exuded a fatal temptation from head to toe. Mr. Mo was no exception. In that case, she was naturally Mr. Mo's woman. Who dared to have designs on Mr. Mo's woman? Wasn't that just courting death? Thinking of this, they didn't even dare to look at Emma. The little monk also put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha in a low voice. "Amitba, it's all in vain." Emma glanced at the people below. Her voice was also full of temptation, although she was only speaking in a normal tone. After advancing to a level 10 super mutant vampire, the desire for human blood in your heart will be greatly reduced. You can completely use the blood of other creatures to replace human blood. Although human blood is still delicious in the eyes of level 10 super mutant vampires, it is not indispensable. As a former human, I can completely resist this temptation. Emosher spoke at this moment. When I first found Emma, she was forcefully turned into a vampire. At that time, she was only a level 1 vampire. For level 1 vampires, human blood is a necessity. But at that time, she would rather starve to death than taste a mouthful of human blood that was delivered to her mouth. If even Emma could resist when she had to suck blood at level 1, then when you become level 10 super mutant vampires, human blood is not a necessity. Could it be that you still can't resist? When the people below heard this, they all looked ashamed. Emma continued speaking. After becoming a vampire, there is one greatest benefit: immortality. As long as you continue to suck blood and maintain your body's condition, then you will have almost endless life. This sentence reminded everyone, and many people's eyes lit up. Although they already knew that the legendary vampires were almost immortal, but they did not really believe it. Even monsters like zombies would rot after hundreds of years. Naturally, vampires would not be spared. But now, hearing it from a vampire personally, they finally believed it a little. That was an endless life. Who did not want to live forever? Emosher looked at the people below, and each of their eyes lit up. He continued speaking. Of course, I will not force you. Everything will be voluntary. There are only 100 people in the first batch. If anyone wants to be turned into a vampire in the future, we will talk about it later. When everyone heard Emosher's words, they all raised their hands. Mr. Emo, I want to become a vampire. Mr. Emo, I want it too. Among them, the most enthusiastic ones were those who were still rank 1 and rank 2 hunters. They saw that the people around them had all become stronger, but because of their lack of talent, they had been stuck at level 1 or 2. Now that there was a chance to become a level 10 hunter, how could they not be excited? Emosher waved at Guojutao and gave him 100 small bottles. He said, pick 100 people and give each of them a bottle. Guojutao nodded and said, yes, Mr. Mo. So that night, there were 100 level 10 super mutant vampires in the base. Soon, these 100 people would become level 1 evolved vampires. At that time, the base's strength would be greatly improved. After doing all this, Emosher said to Emma, it seems that your strength can only increase quickly by sucking more blood? And it must be the blood of creatures that are on par with you or beyond your strength. Emma nodded. Yes, master. Emosher said, with your strength, it will be too difficult to deal with the level 5 wild beasts on the island. Come with me to a place tomorrow. Emma had no objections. Yes, master. The next morning, Emosher told Happy that he would be away for a few days. Even though Happy was reluctant to part with him, he still supported Emosher. He told Emosher to go and come back early. At 9 o'clock in the morning, Emosher took Emma and her son and left the base. When people saw the three of them leave, they all thought to themselves, she really is Mr. Mo's woman. Some people muttered in their hearts, won't Happy be jealous? When they turned around, they saw that Happy had already gone to the farm to work. Happy felt that the others were getting stronger quickly, but he was still an ordinary person. If he couldn't help much, he could only go to the farm. So he worked on the farm every day. The farm was named after her, Happy Farm. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.